welcome all of you. I really thank you for coming. I'm going to first of all just briefly introduce myself. Then I'd like to ask all of you just to introduce yourself, just say your name. And also, what particularly drew you to this workshop? Why was this significant for you to come? You know, just briefly, but just think about that for a moment. Why this particular workshop? What brought you here? I'm going to just start by saying some prayers. These are prayers to previous teachers. A lot of the information I gathered and researched were from different gurus and different scriptures, and so it's kind of starting by just honoring them. This prayer is very beautiful. Actually, it starts off by saying that I'm born in darkness. I'm born in forgetfulness of my true nature, and therefore all of these personalities have helped to illuminate my mind, and it's giving them respects and gratitude. So I just wanted to share what this prayer is about, because the whole thing is in Sanskrit, but I like to recite it before speaking. Om Gyan Simarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Shri Chaitanya Mano Vishtam Sthapitam Yena Buddhave Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Yati Svapadamakam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatham Vitam Tam Sajivitam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Shri Krishna Bhavan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dino Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanda Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Anshakalpaturubhischa Kripa Sindhu Vacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. My name is Ghanashyam, and for 11 years I lived here in the Bhakti Center as a monk, as a brahmachari. And just before making that decision to be a monk, I was in college, and this desire was really growing in me to just immerse myself in all things spiritual. Somehow that kind of awakened at that time in my life, and I was just really seeking and exploring different spiritual paths. And I came in contact with this path of Krishna Bhakti, which is devotion to God, devotion to Krishna, and I found that this was my home. And so I lived here as a monk in this building for 11 years. And through those years, I also was, one service I had was I was a chaplain at New York University. So a chaplain offers spiritual support. So in the university context, this is like, all the stresses of student life and just being able to support. I also did some classes there on the Bhagavad-gita, the main spiritual text from India. And so when I left the ashram, the monastery, after 11 years, I continued on in this service as a chaplain, but now I do it in a hospital context. So I worked at Bellevue Hospital, which is right up the road, for a year, and currently I'm at New York Presbyterian Hospital, and I'm a Hindu chaplain there. So I have the opportunity to see death and dying up close. And I'll also add that it's just been a real deep interest of mine, death, and what happens after death. And those years in the monastery when I was studying, I would gather all the verses that are connected to death and kind of kept a little booklet. I called it Death. And there's all the scriptural verses, what happens when you die. And I started putting this all together. There's many sources of information, what happens. And at some point I also began to broaden my research. And besides just being the sources of India, I kind of started reading other books, Buddhism. What do they say happens when you die? What about Islam? What about Christianity? And what I found is very remarkable. There's a real unity. There's a real consistency in what all these different traditions say. And there are some differences too, so that can be acknowledged, but there's a kind of real connection between all of it, and so I'm going to present some of that to all of you today. So I became interested, and I read one verse that says, the purpose of human life is to die gloriously. And that struck me. What does that mean? And how do you do that? Why is that the purpose of life? It's interesting. The purpose of life is to die in a certain way, gloriously, it says. And some commentators say that this is actually the key to life, to knowing how to die. And so it's a very deep thing. And it's not about the physical process of dying, but it's about the values that we hold sacred and the values that we live by. How much we've loved in our lives, our connection, our love for God, our love for each other. How do I respond to the daily deaths that come into my life? So many deaths are always coming. Right? So we're going to discuss what death actually means. There's physical death, but you cannot just wait for that and then die gloriously. You have to learn the art of dying while living, and all the different scriptures talk about this as the key to conquering death, actually. Conquering death. Is there enough chairs? Are there more chairs? Yeah, there's one up here. Okay. Sorry?
Can I have another hand up for 2 more minutes?
Yes, thanks. Yes. So, it's all about really how we live that enables us to die gloriously. Okay. Maybe. Just put it together a few minutes ago. It's not like this sacred document. So, we'll get into that more on what that means. So first, I'd just like to briefly hear from you. Just state your name. I want to can't obviously remember everybody's name, I don't think, but I want to write down your names just so I can for myself. And also say just a few words why you're here. Why did you particularly come to this workshop? Would you like to start?
Sure. I too work at New York Presbyterian. My name is Missy, and I'm a music therapist in acute care pediatric. And so, as always, I'm a witness to the journey that is not my personal journey, but these children and these families, and wanting a larger perspective. Because I think dying is, again, as you said, there's loss in many ways. There's loss of an arm, or there's loss of, it's not just about the body per se.
Hi, my name is Diane, and I was invited by a friend of mine.
Hello, I'm Athena, and I'm a yoga teacher. And I guess I don't know, I saw the title, thought it was very interesting. I guess, sometimes I do work with older students, and sometimes if we get into a philosophy discussion, I think there's probably a better way to say, like, oh, don't worry, like, this one's eternal. I don't know if it, resonates with us all. So I guess it was just interesting because I guess, I'm sure everything's about delivery and how to deliver that message for them to receive it well. I thought it was very interesting and wanted to share that.
My American name is Mildred. However, I was given by the name Krsna at another place years ago. Bhagavad-gita, if you've heard about it. And I never really, I'm very naive. a very naive, irresponsible way, irresponsible to this light that was thrown on me. The only thing we send no medications at 94 and 3/4.
Wow.
That is not 10 much per person. Let me tell you, I feel almost ashamed to be here because I've been interested in the Bhagavad-gita and studying that, but not making it, putting it into my heart. It's something out there that people need to know about. I've always felt people out there need to know this, but I left myself out of that home. It's strange, but that's me.
Thank you for sharing that. We're grateful that you're here, and I think it says a lot that you are here. That you're
My daughter knew this was on, and she said, no, would you like to go? And I said, indeed. I have been here before at many other events, so I'm very happy I can join this afternoon. She had the wisdom to suggest I come.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
My name is Gail, and this subject really didn't interest me so much, but you know I stalk you, I go there and so that was enough for me.
I believe as a jail, death has always been very fascinating for me, and especially what happens after that. And you and Ghanashyam talked about it a lot of times, and when you said you were talking about it, I was like, I have to go.
Ghanashyam, my name's Ken. I guess I have a fear of death, so I guess maybe this is maybe my attempt to try to make peace with death.
My name is Radhe, and I came for the same thing. I can understand it, so I can work on the fear a little bit.
Thank you. Let's go here.
I'm Osura. I was always fascinated by death, and I did a couple of end-of-life death readings and inner training at the Zen Center for Contemplative Care, just a 9-month program.
My name is Lucy. I'm here because you were speaking, and I'm really interested in death. I'd like to live my life in a way where any moment I'm ready to go when that moment comes, and know that I did my best to to be ready. And so everything in my life is as a preparation for that, so I can, at the end, have those regrets and just be comfortable and confident in where I'm going.
My name is Gigi. I took your Bhagavad-gita thing, and you talked about this a little bit.
Yeah.
And at that time, my grandmother was dying. So you brought it up and talked about, you're dying every day, and at the end of the day, it's a death and all that, and I thought it was really interesting. And you were saying people who struggle their whole life, that's kind of how their death goes, and she was like throwing food and stuff at people in the hospital. It was like, I was just like embarrassed, and I don't know, I just couldn't believe. She wasn't a very nice person, and what it brought up for everybody in my family, like my mom's like so afraid of death and like grasping, and it's just really, I don't really fear death like they do. Like, I don't know, I just kind of want to understand. I don't really, they're like, I don't know, I have so much stuff to do. I'm like, no, that's the day that you don't have stuff to do. I don't know, so I just wanted to hear what you had to say about all of these things.
Death can bring a lot of stuff to the surface that's down in there. And then you can see sometimes people, when death comes, their reactions can be very bewildering to other people. But it also means something's in there. It cannot be dealt with while we're living. Instead of just, at that time when things get crazy, then it all kind of comes out. Is there something we can do in the here and now to face those things? Thank you for sharing.
Hi, I'm Tiffany. I'm here as any lecture you do. I try my best to make it. It's always working. And if you can drag me out of the house on a Sunday, it says a lot. So, and I guess I just haven't really figured out how to live right yet. And so I'm wondering if that has some perspective on how I can do that a little bit better every day.
we'll go here and then we'll.
I'm Dawn. I'm the father of the Baptist. Both my parents died a long time ago, and both of them died instantaneously of cardiac arrest, which is how people in my family die. So I'm very aware of that. I'm getting older, and anything can happen any day, which is true of anybody. But that, the idea that there'll be like a year where you're ill and you make amends to everybody, that you do whatever you have to do that. Actually, you shouldn't operate on that assumption. And I have actually studied some other religious traditions, but I'm really interested in this one.
Thank you.
I'm Ken, and I came to spend some meaningful life with my dad, right here. And it seems like a nice way to do it.
Awesome. Thank you.
My name is Ken, and
Ken section right here.
And the subject immediately was fascinating to me. Also because a really dear friend of mine has a terminal illness, and I was really surprised at my own reaction to spending time with him, how changed it made me, although he seems very accepting and unchanged, and maybe think more about the subject. And I also enjoy you and your teaching. So thank you.
My name is Dina Bandhu. I am, I was very interested in this seminar because so I am connected to the same spiritual tradition as Ghanashyam, and also we stay together for a brief time here, and also I work as a chaplain at New York Methodist Hospital in Park Slope, and so I'm fairly new to that work. I've been doing it for about a year, and so in experiencing all of these intense encounters with patients and families, I'm always trying to process more and more what it means to me, what it means on a universal level, and I'm finding that being able to understand these things through the lens of this tradition also would be really helpful for me. I think I need more of that for my own self-reflection. And I also I consider Ghanashyam to be senior in terms of his spiritual life and also as a chaplain. So it's a great benefit for me to come and be able to hear from him.
Very good. Raj, do you think you could grab a few more chairs?
Sure.
Sorry about the chair situation to those who came in and don't have a chair. We're going to get a few more and put them in the back.
Hi, I'm Jay. Actually coming to Mark because I enjoyed learning with you before. But the phrase itself is very interesting to me, and I confess I first heard it when I was a young boy when George Harrison sung it. And but I think now that I very recently started to give more serious thought to things that this matter, well, I was actually very happy to hear that you're teaching us classes because it's appealing to me that the difference between dying and death, that it is itself an act, it's something you can think about and do well at. So.
My name is Krishna Kumari. There's so much that I would like to say, but I don't talk very fast, so I'll try to shorten it. When I was a teenager, a close friend died, and it sent me searching at that age for answers. And I found the Bhagavad-gita and these same teachings. Since then, I have been at both births and deaths, both in sacred places and in ordinary places. And I actually love birth and I love death. They're both amazing transitions. I personally work, my own business is colon hydrotherapy. I do colonics. And I had a teacher, Rasa Gya. She was a wonderful personality that could just on the spot dance and sing for you, but she also did colonics. And she told me when I was training that that was the most vulnerable that people will be, when they were letting go of their waste. And I see people let go of stuff daily, like stuff they don't even remember. And I think it's really important that we do. We work to transition things that we don't need anymore while we're conscious and present. And in the future, 10 years, I would like to open an ashram that has both young and old. Well, not open it, but assist in it, and really let people experience people on the other end and change the view of so-called old age homes, and see the joy that we can learn from our elders and by serving them. So that's my desire.
Hi Krishna, my name is Shaidya, and I'm a hospice nurse for 15 years. And I've been really fortunate to participate in the dying process of several of our congregation members in our Hare Krishna community in New Jersey. And both my parents died of sudden death, so I've been in it. So I'm really excited.
Hi, my name is Dylan, and I guess this subject kind of interests me because I've always felt like really distant to death. Even in the past few years, several members of my family have passed, and I've always felt strange because it seems like I don't feel the same fear as the other people around me, and I don't know, should I be afraid?
We'll keep going around that way.
I'm Karen, and a few days ago, I was at a yoga class and the teacher was talking about detachment and the reason why we practice detachment in this lifetime is to make it easier for our soul to leave our bodies when we die. And she also told me about this place after class, so when I looked it up later, I saw this workshop and it was cool.
My name is Dana. I've had a decent amount of death in my life, and it's never really sat too uncomfortably with me. I've always had some idea that it wasn't the end of the world type of situation. So I've always just been interested in learning new things about it and new opinions and what people have to say about it. So, and she told me about this. So yeah.
Hi, I'm Laura. I've been a hospice volunteer for a few months. I'm also taking a program at the Zen Center for Contemplative Care. So I'm interested in learning more, and particularly through this lens.
Thank you.
I'm Shotzi. I was a registered nurse for 47 years, and towards the end of my career, I worked with people with AIDS, did home care, so I saw a lot of death and dying. I'm taking the Death Art of Dying at the Open Center, which I absolutely love. I am obsessively into Stephen Jenkinson's book, Die Wise. I'm listening to it, perhaps. I have the audio version of the book as well. I'm listening to it for that maybe 10th time, and I know I'm not finished. And I'm also a volunteer with VNS Hospice. But more important than any of those, given that I'm pushing 87, I am very aware of my mortality and making all sorts of plans for my dying. And I have a beautiful wooded plot upstate in Ulster County for a green burial. And I've been an atheist all my life, and I'm opening up my mind to questioning what happens after we die, which I've never thought was important to even think about one way or the other.
Thank you.
My name is Ultra. I'm also a student at the New York Zen Center. I've been working my way towards this since 1999, and I've been working in hospice now since September, and the more I contemplate death, the richer my life becomes. So I just want to learn more.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Katarina, and I think when I think of death, I normally think, oh, I'm not really scared of death. But then I think also that's because I haven't been faced with it personally, so I have no idea once things in front of me how I will feel. And I think it's interesting to explore this topic. And like my dad, he's previously almost died, but he was fine, and he's been sick lately. And I know he very much fears death. So then normally I'll say things to make him like less fearful. But I think that the more you explore it and hear things and talk about it, maybe you can take something away that you can then share with someone. But yeah, it's just an interesting topic for me.
Thank you.
I'm Liz. I'm also a hospice volunteer visiting your schools. And it's something I've really enjoyed my experience so far, and I just wanted to continue being part of the discussion about death and life. I'm also trained to be a birth doula, so for some reason it all makes sense to me.
Hi, my name is Nora, and a few months ago I was assigned to work on a project on aid and dying legislation for New York State. I never thought about death before that, and then I started to think about people in their last stages of life and palliative care, and how can we serve people in that state, and especially vulnerable populations. And so this seminar was really interested in that.
My name is Delia, and a lot of what has said here resonates with me. For the last 3 decades or so, I guess my passion, my hobby, and my life has been investigating the spiritual path. I've sat at the foot of my lamas and gurus, studying with them, and entered the path of yoga, and particularly Buddhism, about 3 decades ago. Largely from a meditative and philosophical path. So I love reading the scriptures, and I love listening very deeply. And in my listening, I recognized that there was something calling to me. So I listened more deeply, and somewhere in the silence, I began to feel that my life was meant to give back all that I had been given. So, more concretely in the future, I envision myself possibly opening what I call the retreat center, or an ashram, where I would have, it would be community living, conscious community living. There would be places for people to die in dignity, and to live in dignity, to heal and grow and love in dignity. My work has been as an educator and working on the service projects of my teachers largely. I come from a medical family, 2 doctors, and ironically, I've witnessed both of them passing from cancer. And through my own practice of meditation and service, I came to see that I don't learn to serve, but I serve to learn. And I'd like to celebrate life and death without neglecting the rites of passage that all stages. I'm interested in this work and possibly chaplaincy, and I'm very excited to see others here that share about it.
Thank you so much.
My name is Ling. I lost my dad when I was a teenager. I think the way we relate to death has always been very emotional for myself personally. And increasingly I found myself very drawn towards more scientific and philosophical ways of looking at talking about it through Buddhism. I'm interested to see what this text has to say about it.
Thank you.
My name is Heather, and I have a friend who had a blessing ceremony today here at the Bhakti Center. She's about to give birth, and I had heard that Ghanashyam was teaching this class about a month ago, and I thought that would be so fantastic to hear from Ghanashyam, since he's had experience outside of the Bhakti Center, because I want to learn more from this devoted soul who has taught me more about humility than anyone else. I can tell you that anything Ghanashyam can teach from his heart, I just pray everybody keeps that. With you. Sorry, Ghanashyam. I'm busy crying.
Thank you for your encouragement.
Hi, I'm Besa, and since I was a child, I had a lot of experiences with death. I didn't realize I could sense the energy of death, and when I came across that experience with a bird, it started making me kind of wonder a lot about death and God and the universe and my place here. And so fast forward through life, a lot of premonitory dreams about when people pass away. And then when I've been around people, I sense when they're passing away. And so then I decided my journey went a different direction, and I was blessed enough to study with the Jain nun at the university. And so I studied Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, and she's the one that came up with the idea for me to be a chaplain. And I was like, I didn't even realize that existed, I thought that was just a volunteer situation. And so then I ended up at the New York Zen Center with my fellow colleagues who invited me here today. And I want to also ready myself to death, because we're dying every single moment. And I hope, it makes life be a lot brighter. So thank you.
Thank you. Who doesn't have a sheet? Okay. Yep.
I also need a sheet.
The what? We got one more. That might be. I got one more. Does everyone have one? Yeah. I realize we're not getting to everybody. I wanted to start. I didn't expect so many people. I'm thrilled that there's so many people here. This is wonderful. I also kind of want to get started. Maybe we have time later for others to be able to share. So I'd like to first of all just affirm your decision to be here and your interest in this topic. We've heard so many different reasons why people are here. And I'd like to affirm that as deeply wise. Because this is why. Why is it deeply wise? Because the topic of death, as you can see from what everyone shared, it has such transformative power. It has the power to transform our lives, because it's, just this topic of death, what all of you have shared, you see the kind of like power that's there to really get us thinking, to change ourselves, to change our lives. And therefore, all religions, and at least as many of I've kind of looked into a lot of different spiritual paths and traditions, and from what I understand, all of them in some way draw upon death as a knowing that within death there's a potential to transform our lives. And so you have different practices. The topic of death, the meditation on death, You know, it's found everywhere. The Buddhists, you know, Buddhist monks traditionally would go to the burning grounds, and they would just sit there in meditation and watch as the body burned. This is a meditation on impermanence, you know, seeing the impermanence of the body. Anyone ever see something like this? Burning? They actually set the fire in the mouth of the person. And this is kind of also done in India. Hindus also. Hindu monks will come to the cremation grounds and see. And the Hindus also would meditate on, this is the body, but that life principle, that Atma, is gone. And they'd be able to discriminate between the Atma, the soul, and then the body. Just the body's just deteriorating. The Orthodox Christian tradition and the Catholic tradition also, if you read the writings of the early monks, they all had some little section in their writing. I read a few of these books. So there's always some meditation on death as part of their practice, as part of some important thing to focus on in life. There's some power there to really change us. And so it's included everywhere. I'll read something. This is, I think for Catholics, the next most important book after the Bible is a book called The Imitation of Christ, which was written by a Catholic monk. And so he also, in his little book, has a section called A Meditation on Death. And I thought I'd just read quickly from this, see what he says, how this can be of some use to us. So he says, very soon the end of your life will be at hand. Consider, therefore, the state of your soul. Today a man is here, tomorrow he is gone, and when he is out of sight, he is soon out of mind. Oh, how dull and hard is the heart of man, which thinks only of the present, and does not provide against the future. You should order your every deed and thought as though today were the day of your death. Had you a good conscience, death would hold no terrors for you. Blessed is the man who keeps the hour of death always in mind, and daily prepares himself to die. Happy and wise is he who endeavors to be during his life as he wishes to be found at his death. The present time is most precious. Now is the accepted time. Now is the day of salvation. Foolish man, how can you promise yourself a long life when you are not certain of a single day? How many have deceived themselves in this way and been snatched unexpectedly from life? You have often heard how this man was slain by the sword, another drowned, how another fell from a high place, how another died at the table, how another met his end in play. One perishes by fire, another by the sword, another from disease. Death is the end of all men, and the life of man passes away suddenly as a shadow. So then finally he concludes, keep yourself a stranger and pilgrim upon earth. Keep your heart free and lifted up to God, for down here you will have no abiding city. Daily direct your prayers and longings to heaven, that at your death your soul may merit to pass joyfully into the presence of God. So just a powerful meditation on many things, right? So all different traditions. The Sikhs also, I was asking one Sikh man, you've seen the Sikhs, they wear turbans. And there's a kind of style of a turban where there's kind of a knot at the top. And I asked one man, what is the significance of this? He said it has a few different significances, but one in particular, he was saying this is actually the tombstone to remind us that this is the tombstone, that we all have to die, and we use that as a way of being serious about our spiritual life, our practice. So this reminder, there's all these symbols of reminders of death. There's a Latin expression also, memento mori, which means remember death. And there's these pictures that were painted and frescoes that were made. Famous one called Dance of Death. And there's these various pictures of different moments in somebody's life. And whatever's happening, whatever like ceremonial moment, like there's a king being coronated, there's the birth of a child, there's a wedding. So behind all of these scenes, there are these skeletons that are walking, following the procession, beating drums. And the idea is that like you see this, okay, the birth of a child, so beautiful, there's everyone is gathered, but in the background there are these skeletons that don't forget death. The king is being coronated and there's a procession down the road, and in the back of the procession are these skeletons again, beating on these drums. So you see even in Europe, So many paintings will have skulls in the background. You think, what is that there? These are all ways of actually reminding us, because there's this great power in remembering. By remembering death, then how do I live? What values am I living by? Living out those values. So let's look at this outline that I gave. And there's this famous tombstone inscription that's there also. I don't know if anyone's heard this before. Dear friend, please know as you pass by, as you are now, so once was I. As I am now, so will you be. Prepare yourself to follow me. Also, this picture here is of Swami Prabhupada. So when he was also passing away, he's a great guru in this line of bhakti. And when he was passing away, all eyes were on him from all of his disciples. And it was very close to the time where he was leaving his body. And he just looked at them with compassion at one point and said, do not think that this will not happen to you. And he said another time also that real philosophy means to always keep death in the forefront. Just always keep it right in front of your eyes. So teaching, that he was teaching even at those last moments that, okay, you're all looking at me and you're feeling so sad, but don't forget, this will also happen to you. Be aware of that. Not in a fearful way that we're just always in fear, but again, there's a power of transformation if we can keep that in the forefront of our consciousness. Right? So there's great power there, the transformative power of death. Because it's so confronting, right? It's so confronting. One philosopher calls death the big no. It's like, I want to live and I want to be happy. No, you have to die. But I have these desires and I have these hopes and dreams. No. It's so confronting. There's the horror of death. We can also see there is a horror there. On one level, we can acknowledge that. On another level, we can see other things. But let's also not move too fast from the horror of death. Like some of you also mentioned the fear that's there. That's also very natural and that's valuable to have. Because if we move too fast, we'll see this is important, that if we move too fast from the horror of it, especially when it comes to caring for those who are dying, we want to move fast from that this person's in so much fear. We want to just come and bring the light and say something positive. But there's a way of also staying with that, because that's also important. A person has to gradually go through their own journey. So there's a way of also just being able to acknowledge the horror of it, but also, what's another view? Is there another view of actually what's happening? So we're going to look at that, this other view. On another level, this view is different. But on one level, that can be acknowledged, the terror and the horror of death. And we don't want to move too fast for that either. Because there's some significance in going through certain stages in an organic way and not jumping. Because we'll hear spiritual knowledge and we think, yeah, I'm there, but we're only there up in here in the intellect. I should be peaceful at that. But meanwhile, the emotions, what about the fear that's there? That can also be gone through. It has to be gone through. So, what is this other view? What actually happens after we die? Now, I realize it may seem presumptuous for me to sit here and say, okay, now I'm going to tell you guys the science of death and what happens after death. Right? After all, this is the big mystery. If you go to anybody on the street, anybody anywhere, what happens after death? Now, how can we know? Does anybody really know? I can quote scriptures, but does anyone really know? So I'd like to make the case that there are those who know. I'd like to try to make this case. First thing I wanted to point out in this regard is that in the West, here in the West, we've developed so much in the material sciences. Right? Material science. How much progress that I could pick up a phone. And with a little phone, it's very wonderful. I could call India, I could call anywhere and be speaking to somebody in a moment. So many powers that have been unveiled. But why? Because there are scientists with this focus and this intent and this vigor and this determination to discover things on a material level. So we've developed ourselves very much in the West on the material sciences. Now in India, for thousands of years, with that same vigor and that same investigating spirit, that's been directed towards consciousness. Not material science, but the spiritual science of the self. So you have people that have been dedicated. Imagine, just in a few hundred years here in the West, what we've accomplished when that energy is put towards understanding material things and developing material sciences, understanding them. With that focus, so many incredible things have been discovered. Right? Now imagine a culture for 1,000 years or so, of them in all that same energy and focus and determination to understand the self, the consciousness, and what actually happens, different stages of consciousness. And it's not just India, other places have done this too. I was doing research on this topic with Indian scriptures, Egyptian scriptures, Buddhist scriptures. These are people that come from lineage of people focusing on consciousness and the reality of consciousness, stages of consciousness, what happens after death. And the amazing thing is you find a unity and consistency. What all of them say, there's a great consistency among these various traditions. So, there's this term, yogi pratyaksha. Pratyaksha means that means direct perception. Like I see this table, I see this wall, I can directly say that these things are there. Yogi pratyaksha is when these senses, the pratyaksha, the perception of a yogi. So the idea is that the yogi learns how to expand the range of the senses. Just like I can only see so far. There's a way to expand what a person can see. This is to develop the expansion of consciousness. With the expansion of consciousness also, the sense range can also expand. Right? I can only hear certain things, but we all know that an animal, a dog, can hear things I can't hear. So there are some people that have a further range. The range has increased. Right? And we see also when you find someone is born with one of the senses is not strong or not working at all. Say somebody is born blind. And sometimes what happens is a compensation takes place. Another sense perception becomes more powerful. So it shows that the range can increase a little bit, right? You think of some musicians, I think of Stevie Wonder, who's born blind, but then somehow this ability towards music and that sense of music, it somehow is increased, that range, his sense range. So yogi pratyaksha means that a yogi, by the development, by the expansion of consciousness, their senses, their range of their senses, what their senses can do can also increase to some degree. And therefore some people have been able to turn inward and discover things and actually see things within themselves that illuminates what reality is. It's very interesting. I had a school teacher. When I was in high school, I went to school and I studied piano. And in college too, I studied piano. So my piano teacher in high school, she was just an ordinary woman. She was not spiritual. She didn't consider herself spiritual. But she always talked about this thing that she had where she was always able to see people's auras. And she didn't know what it was, and she did her own research and found out, this is a thing called aura. But her whole life, she describes that I always see a kind of energy field around a person. And she would even say the color, and she'd also say sometimes when I was sick, I'd come in and she'd say, you seem like it's a little agitated, your aura. And at that time I just thought, I don't know what she's talking about. This is weird. I didn't know what an aura was here. And she'd say, I see it like this, and I see it like that. And she lived in a Jewish community. And she said that Jewish people, when they would come out of the temple sometimes, she'd say their auras are very crisp. Because she said that when you have a very regulated life and disciplined life and you do the same thing, somehow this creates a crisp aura. These are just her understanding of it. But a person who doesn't identify as spiritual or anything like that, but somehow has a sense, where you can see things, but sees a little more. Because of some increase, for whatever reason, there's an ability to see something a little further. And so what to speak of yogis who have dedicated themselves to increasing this, expanding their consciousness and seeing more and more. So when we're going to hear about what happens at death according to these yogis. For us, this is theory. But this theory, we can keep our minds open that this theory may be rooted in the experience of someone else. It's not just some theory somebody made up, right, that they put together. Like we hear about the chakras, right? Is that someone just decided to just make up something that there's centers in the body? Why do the Chinese talk about it? They talk about the meridians, the energy centers. The Hindus also talk about the chakras. Has someone actually seen that? or is it just made up? So it's said that the traditions hold that actually this is the perception of people. This is rooted in experience. We take it as theory, but if we can open our minds to the possibility that it's not theory, that these things are actually seen and experienced. Also, the whole science of Ayurveda. Anyone here familiar with Ayurveda? Yeah. Now, Ayurveda gets into specifics about the organs in the body. How do they know that? There's no account of anyone, they're not in a laboratory with mice, dissecting mice, and trying to kind of see the organs, and that was never done. They didn't wait for a body to die and dissect the body with some instruments and look at, okay, this is the liver. But all this information is there about these different organs and details in the scriptures. So it's explained from the tradition that through consciousness, by looking inward, looking at oneself from the inside, can you imagine? It's kind of mind-blowing for us, right? But again, imagine a whole culture where this has been developed for so long to understand these subtle things within ourselves. So the whole system of Ayurveda and all the details that have been discovered have been confirmed by modern science. It's not done with instruments cutting open bodies, but it's actually done by yogis who are able to look in and see what's there from the inside. So quite amazing for our minds. At the same time, the material sciences, those are amazing too, but we take them for granted now. And I can connect, I can put on the television and see what's happening in Korea right now. This is incredible. It's the material level, and then how much more powerful is consciousness. Consciousness is most powerful. So, I wanted to point that out, that what we're going to cover here is actually rooted in experience and not just, even though it's theory for us, so to take it in a way, at least remain open to that possibility. So the after-death experience. And we see that some traditions just give some general ideas of what happens, and others give more details. You see? So when we hear something very general and basic, and then somewhere else we can hear something much more specific about all those details. And what about the differences? There are also differences. Somebody says it's like this, and somebody says it's like that. But there's also a place for differences because many possibilities exist of what happens after death. Why is that? I work in the hospital I was mentioning, and I also carry this pager with me every day, the cardiac arrest pager. So that means whenever there's a cardiac arrest, I have to be there immediately. So in the past 3 years, maybe 50 or 60 times I've been there with this cardiac arrest. So the heart stops. And so people come, nurses come, doctors come, I come. And so I've experienced many times people who have clinically been dead, but somehow they're revived. And then I go see them. And I don't just walk in the next day and ask what happened. But through conversation, some people have talked about what they experienced. So one person that I was with, and he was sharing, he said, now I know for sure, at death, nothing happens. Because I experienced nothing. So I'm convinced now. I had some ideas, maybe some heaven, now I know nothing happens. So someone else I went to go see, what was their experience? That she said that it's kind of a heavy story, but she was saying that for a couple seconds, she actually was dead, the heart stopped. And she said, in that experience, that I felt that these two personalities were in front of me, and they were tugging at me. They were tugging at me, and like kind of trying to pull something, like almost like she was describing, like pulling the soul from my body. And she said they were very gruesome, and they were, and therefore when she came back, she was like terrified, and she wanted to know, what was that? Where am I going? What was that all about? I lived a pretty good life, and was I going to hell? That was her question to me. Was I going? How could I be going to hell? I wasn't a terrible person. I made some mistakes, but anyway, I didn't give her all kinds of answers. People don't want actually philosophical answers at that time. Not to get into philosophy at that point. People are scared, and you want to kind of be with them in whatever their experience. But I know from my own study of the scriptures of Hinduism that there's actually names for these personalities, and the description, the way they looked is exactly how she was describing to me. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, this is called the Yamadutas. That a certain personalities come and they actually take the soul from the body. You can hear about this in other places as well. but its details are given about that. So I thought that was very interesting. So the only advice I gave her is that, well, wherever you were going or not going, you didn't go. You're here. You're here now. So what change, from that experience, what change do you need to make? What do you need to do to help yourself? If you're afraid now, then what will help you? Do you need to take shelter of God? Do you need to reflect on your life? Do you need to live in a different way for this time that you're still here? Because after all, you're still here. You didn't go to hell. Like that. So another person I went to see said at that time, that moment when they were gone, they saw their mother who had passed away. How do you account for all these different experiences? Because a variety of experiences can exist because it's based on our consciousness. Our beliefs, our thoughts, our desires, our fears. At the time of death, this is what comes into the fore. What desires have I cultivated? What are my thoughts throughout my life? What are my beliefs? What are my attachments? This is called, in Sanskrit, svabhava, your svabhava, which means it's almost like a mass of consciousness that you have. It's the sum total of all of your thoughts, fears, desires. At the time of death, that kind of comes out in someone. Therefore, throughout life, if we're cultivating spiritual desires, living with integrity, living with love, serving others, then that's also creating a kind of mass of consciousness. We'll experience that time. So there's this consciousness. What kind of consciousness are we forming?
Would you mind spelling out the word Svabhava?
Svabhava, yeah, S-V-A.
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 Yeah, B-H-A-V-A. Svabhava. It means like the sum total of your consciousness, of what you've experienced, what you think, what you desire. It kind of forms a subtle mass within our consciousness, and that can lead to certain experiences. And that's just not after death, right? This is true of life. Whatever I'm cultivating, I'm drawing certain things into my life. You know, we think, why am I around these people? Why do these things happen to me? And we think it's just some random thing coming into my life. But another view, the spiritual view, is that I'm drawing things towards myself according to the consciousness that I'm creating. Why does this thing keep coming into my life again and again? Do I just have to make some external change, or am I somehow bringing it on myself? See, this is a way of describing karma. This is a different way of describing karma. That I'm producing my life. If you want to look at what's in your consciousness, you have to examine your life. The external manifestation of your life is just a reflection of consciousness. So now, okay, so I'm mentioning some people can see the reality of this. In Sanskrit, this is called, therefore Krishna says in the Bhagavad-gita that you should approach the tattvadarshi. Tattvadarshi means one who can see these truths. They're not just theoretical ideas, but approach a person who can actually see the truth. But what about us? We don't see this, right? We don't know this for sure. Is there some tool that we could use here and now that could help us know the reality of these things? Is there some tool? There is some tool. Even for us, without our developed consciousness, without this, I was talking about this yogi pratyaksha, the expansion of this. What's the tool that we can use to know for certain some of these things? So let's read this outline. You look on the front page. This is the classic traditional axiom. This is like the master key to understanding things that are beyond our ordinary mind. And let's look at the second one first. There's two quotes from two places. This is from the Katha. This is from Hindu scripture. It says, whatever is here, notice the lowercase h, and with the there you get a capital H. Everyone see this under a definite science there on the first page? I'm quoting this passage from the Katha. Whatever is here is also there. Whatever is there, that again is here. One who sees things here as different goes from death to death. Takes a little meditation on this first to see, but what do you think is being said, and why is this such a valuable point?
Wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? Yeah.
I guess whatever is here is the material world, and whatever is there is the spiritual world.
Yeah.
And this is the material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. And if you see it differently, you don't understand that. You said it goes from death to death. That means you're going to keep on taking reincarnations and transformations.
In other words, whatever's there, the capital T means the spiritual. Whatever's there can be found here. And we'll see how this is possible. Let's look at the verse right above it. This is from Hermes Trismegistus. This is a famous axiom. Again, same idea. Same, different tradition, different time, different place. What does he say? That which is below corresponds to that which is above. And that which is above corresponds to that which is below, to accomplish the miracle of the one thing. This is interesting. So this is called the method of analogy. You can use analogy. There are correspondences to eternal truths that are beyond us, right here before our eyes. So what's an example of that? Yeah.
A microcosm, macrocosm.
Yeah, same idea.
In the big, it's the same idea.
Yeah, there's the microcosm, us very small, and then there's the macrocosm, and there's a relationship. In Sanskrit also, there's terms for this. It's called samasti and vyasti, which means the macro and the micro. That whatever is some big truth that I'm going to talk about, reincarnation, that truth is available right before our eyes also. Can anyone see it? Can anyone see that reincarnation is taking place right in front of our eyes? What's some example of that?
Getting older.
Huh?
Getting older.
Getting older? Yeah, how does that work? How's that an example of?
Because according to modern science, every cell in the body is completely different 7 years later. So if I'm the same person but I was a baby and now I'm an old person, I have a completely different body.
Yeah, the body is always changing, right? And this is a scientific fact that every 7 years, every cell of your body is different. You're actually a different person. It's not that you just your body just stretches more and more to the same. You're actually different. So even in this life, this is Krishna. He explains this in Bhagavad-gita, that reincarnation is happening right here now. What's another example of reincarnation right before our eyes?
Like the seasons, flowers.
Yeah, think about that, right? We're right now in winter. Then comes spring. Then comes summer. Then comes fall. Then comes winter. Then comes spring. Then comes summer. See, when you start to see it everywhere, what happens is you start to feel the truth of it. And it's not theoretical anymore, but you have to feel it and see it everywhere. What's another example?
Eating lunch.
How so?
The energy of a plant, had its life or whatever you eat, it goes into your body, sustains your life, and then passes it along and goes back into the soil and another plant grows.
Eating. Great example. You eat something, your body assimilates it. Then you empty it out. Then guess what? You get hungry again. You eat again. Assimilate. This is process of coming and going, coming and going. What about our breath? Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. It's that same motion of coming, going, coming and going. Everything in the world is operating this way. Everything is cyclical. And when you start to see it everywhere and start to feel it inside, then one can understand that even at the time of death, that's not the end. It's a cycle. There's birth and there's death. There's birth and there's death.
Do you think it's really cyclical or is it a spiral?
Well, the
if
spiral.
you think of because then of the reincarnation, some traditions, one thinks of enlightenment. At one point, it's not going to be.
Yeah, well, that's when you're making spiritual advancement. Kind of cycle occurs, but it becomes like a spiral where you actually elevate it. But if you're not doing that, then it's simply a circle again and again. So there is a way, when we start to really take to a certain path, then this circling continues, but we're going up a little higher every time, almost like this. You're actually getting out of it. Finally, the path becomes more and more simple. I will say that later, but it gets more and more simple. But so long we have no connection to that, then it's simply you're caught. Therefore, it's said that we can be tied to this wheel of birth and death. The wheel that keeps turning, and I'm tied to it. And therefore, birth, and then death, and then birth, and then death. Is there some way out? So reincarnation there. It's some big concept, but we can see how there are ways of seeing it right before ourselves. This is because there's a correspondence here, operating right in front of us. This is the law of correspondence, the method of analogies. Therefore, our spiritual teachers always speak in analogies. You know, Jesus, he would speak with parables. What's a parable? You know, the kingdom of God is like a mustard seed. He's kind of getting to somewhere very deep, but he's making this high thing, bringing it down and showing how there's an example right before you. Now, karma is another big thing, right? Karma, this big cosmic law of cause and effect. Is it not right before us every moment? Do we not see the reality of karma? Karma just means the law of cause and effect. So if I eat something unhealthy, there's going to be some reaction in the body. And then I should think, why is this happening? What am I eating that's causing this? Oh, it's this. It's actually milk products have been creating this problem for me for so many years, therefore I'll stop. Whatever it is. But just the idea of starting to see that cause and effect is happening everywhere. That's happening on a physical plane, right? There's always cause and effect. Action and reaction, action and reaction. But also subtly, do we believe on a subtle level? Like I was saying, our consciousness is also creating things in my life. Some people can see that. I may not be able to connect to it, but in some ways we do, right? We all know that. If I walk around with a very angry, hostile mind, and I'm just shooting out at everybody, and what kind of life is that going to cause for me to have? That's karma. This consciousness is creating things. If I walk around in the spirit of love and service, then I will also attract the hearts of people who also connect to that and want to give back and also want to reciprocate with that. That's karma on a more psychological level. So we start to feel the reality of some of these things. Now, after death, okay, so that's reincarnation, karma. What do we have before our eyes that can reveal to us what happens after death? Now think about your 24-hour day. What happens in your 24-hour day that resembles death and after death?
Sleeping.
Sleeping. Again. Now this is cool because this is recognized by so many spiritual traditions. I have this quote down here. They say sleep is the sister of death. And this Greek proverb, I can't pronounce it. I don't know. Anyone knows this language? I was going to try to do it with my Sanskrit understanding, but it maybe didn't. But Greek proverb, actually this Greek proverb says that sleep is the brother of death. So brother, sister, whatever you want to call it, there's some connection between sleeping and dying and what happens. Many places talk about this. Egypt also, you'll find sleep and death. Here's the key for us. So even though we may not know, we can speculate what happens after death. Here's some key right before us where we can start to, by going and see the similarities, we can see, wow, there's some correspondence here. So imagine your one day. They also say like one day is like an entire life. Again, the micro and the macro. I just put this together right before the class. This is not, it's maybe a little weird, but I don't know if everyone can see it, but I'll talk about it anyway. Think about your one day. This is like one whole life. Right? You wake up in the morning. This is like birth. Right? And then what do we do after we wake up? You know, 2 hours pass, we kind of get refreshed, then we kind of go out into the world. We go out and do something. We work. And then the end of the day comes, we start, getting tired, right? So end of day, end of life, both places. Here at the end of the day, your body starts to get tired, right? At the end of your life, your body starts to break down, get tired. You see the correspondence there. And what do we seek? That, say, what time is this? Say at 9 o'clock, 9:30, we start getting tired. So in your life, what age are you if it's 9:30 at night? I don't have an answer. I'm just somewhere in the ballpark. What do you think? 70, 9:30 at night. It's getting close to midnight. So 9:30, something like that. What do you do at the end of the day? You seek you're starting to get tired. You want some kind of peace or some comfort. You want to relax. You seek some retirement at the end of our life also. You seek retirement. Right? We have our ideas of, now I'm going to retire from all the work. We all have that inclination. That's natural. In India, this is a stage called vanaprastha, which means now at a certain age, you go off to the forest. But the idea is that now you take your spiritual life very seriously. You've lived your life in this world and you've done so many things. Now focus more intently on your spiritual development. Go off to the forest, the place of meditation. So we don't go off to the forest anymore. Some people still do. In India, you'll find a few people who still do this, even at a very young age, they can leave. But anyway, the essence of it, bring it to our modern world, the essence of it is that you take your spiritual path very seriously at a certain time. So then, at the end of the day, then we have a bed. What does a bed look like? A coffin. We get tired, the body, okay, then we go into this thing called the bed. And what do we do in that bed? You close your eyes, you see the resemblance, you see the correspondence. The bed, many people are dying in bed, not everybody, but I'm in the hospital and I see everyone is in their bed. Close your eyes, but you also have to let go to fall asleep. When people who suffer from insomnia, it's this inability to let go of things. There could be other reasons for insomnia. But, to let go of ego control. There's some kind of ego that always wants to control and do. And to be able to sleep good, there has to be a part of it that just let that go. Just drop it and fall asleep. Therefore, this is can be a meditation for those who suffer from insomnia. It's really this idea of being able to let go of things, then you can get sleep. So to die, you also have to let go. Because that's why some people can wait for people to come to see them before they die. You can hold out somehow. You hear many stories like this. I've experienced too. My uncle, who was passing away, was like holding out for my father to come and just say goodbye. People hold out. And as soon as that he came, and we just walked out, and a moment later we just died. And we heard from his wife also that he was just waiting for you to come. Right? There's other stories. Anyone have? There's a part of us that can kind of hold on a little longer. And you also have to let go. So you let go. And then you cross over into something else. What happens at the end of the day? You close your eyes, you let go, and then? Dreams. Not yet. You enter some other state. You enter some other state with some kind of experiences. Very mysterious. What is a dream? We're not going to get so into that. But one thing we can say is that we enter some other kind of state, which is a very mysterious thing. Dreams. So when you die, there are also experiences that come. Crossing over into something else. And then after those dreams, what happens? You wake up again. And at the end of life, after those experiences, what happens? You wake up again into this world. So let's look at this again from another perspective, another view. Well, before we do that, now let's talk about dreams for a moment. Now, you dream at night. There's a variety of dreams you can have, right? Always think of the correspondence. I'm talking about your night dreams, but now we're seeing the connection to death. And so you'll see all the similarities if you keep that in mind. You have lots of experiences at night when you dream. Sometimes it's just a hazy dream. Sometimes it's a nightmare. Sometimes it's beautiful and heavenly. What determines all those factors?
Like unconscious. The day. Like you live.
In some ways, the day, right? In some ways, it's also, like again, like this, my thoughts, my fears, my beliefs, my actions throughout the day. This has a part to play in what we dream. Yes.
It seems to me it's more like your consciousness again, everything up to then, and then often triggered by something that happened during your day.
Yeah.
But then it's, whatever triggered it you may not even understand that trigger.
Yeah.
And then something comes
out. Something comes out sometimes. Yeah. Some trigger. And also, yeah.
Sometimes it's like almost can be a premonition.
Yeah.
That's something that will happen.
Yeah, a fear or a thought, or sometimes we have negative predictions of what may happen and they manifest. This is also the same. Yeah. So our dreams are determined in some ways, we could say, by our thoughts, our actions, our beliefs, our ideas, what we've done throughout the day, what we've done throughout our life. What are we creating in our consciousness? So, also another factor that determines your dreams. Anyone else have another idea? So it's these things that are going on, your thoughts, your beliefs, what you've done throughout the day. What is another major factor that determines the dream you're going to have?
Your environment when you go to sleep.
That's true. That's important, right? That's important. What else?
What you did throughout the day.
What you did throughout the day. Also, what was the last thing you did before falling asleep? Or the last thing going on? You ever have this experience when something occupies your mind very strongly and then you fall asleep? Right? So that's why in Hinduism there's so much emphasis on that crucial moment right before dying. Because what happens right before will have a significant impact on your next experience. And therefore, in all traditions, all religious traditions, you see that everybody wants their priest to be there, they want the imam to be there, they want the monk to be there, they want something holy and someone spiritual to be there because they can somehow feel that this moment is very important, right before I die. And Krishna in the Bhagavad-gita, he explains this, that this is a very important time, right before death, what is occupying your mind. And therefore, as devotees of Krishna, we have this idea also that I want a picture of Krishna. I want to hear about Krishna. I want to be chanting Krishna's name at that time. Because that will also have a strong impact on the next experience. Just like it does in dreams. You know, you have some worry that you go to sleep with. You have some worry. And all of a sudden, you're in this dream, this other state of consciousness. And then there it is, and you're just like running and stressed out somehow. And it comes. So if you look at the outline, this next page, we have some of these teachings from the Bhagavad-gita. Krishna says, little midway down, our consciousness determines our experience and our destiny. Krishna says, whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. So that state of being, again, that word for state of being is swabhav, this accumulated consciousness. Whatever our minds have become saturated with throughout our life, that will determine my experience, my destination.
So are you talking with like any kind of time span there, or is it like the immediate?
Yeah.
Is it like your consciousness, or is it just
the experience after? What are you asking? Sorry.
Well, I mean, like is it like the very final thought? You know what I mean, or is it more just accumulation of?
It's mostly the accumulation, but that final thought has also been given some emphasis as very important.
I see.
Yeah. So in other words, if I live a fully spiritual life with integrity and somehow I have some accidental death, my final thought might be total fear, but still the accumulation of that consciousness drives me to the proper destination. It corresponds to what I've created. But still, there's always this emphasis that that moment is very important. Therefore, we want to be able to see if we can help others in that passing to create some environment that is sacred, that is meaningful. You know, if people have different ideas of what they want at that time, we have to help whatever they want and not impose anything. But still, to understand that scientifically, is actually that moment is very sacred and important, and there is something very beneficial that can be done from our side as assistants.
So, I don't know if it's extremely black or white, but say, and I know there are stories, I don't know if this is Bhagavad-gita, but or others, but if you do live like such a pure life, but we call it Krishna at the very end, or you have a lot of people who maybe have the picture of Krishna chanting, does that actually, does that mean everyone who truly is thinking of Krishna at the time of death goes back to him and stops transmigration? Or is it that you're born to devotee family, like, what, is it a black and white, like, if you remember Krishna at the end of death, you will go to him and you will stop reincarnation, or?
It's a good question. There are stories like that, and that's why you're asking that, because there are stories in the scripture where someone maybe didn't live such a good life in terms of honesty and integrity, whatever it may be, but somehow at that moment they were able to put their minds on Krishna, and then the result was Krishna. They connected to Krishna, they connected to God, they connected to their soul. So we can't deny that. But it's risky to rely on that. It's risky for us to just, we want to here and now cultivate a certain consciousness that really ensures that, at that time. So we can't deny that there are stories like that. At the same time, we don't depend on that, right? Because, how can we say? How can we say that just at that time? But there are stories like that. So it's interesting to think of the power of that moment. Yeah.
I have a question. So you were saying like the experiences of people that had become close to death and then came back.
Yeah.
Then say in your dream, you can have a dream that you can be controlling yourself in the dream, or you can have a dream that is happening and you're not able to control.
Yeah.
So then at the point, say, of dying, when you're entering somewhere and maybe there's these characters or things happening, then you have the ability, for instance, to also then influence where that's going, or no, whatever's like, have you lived your life, it will just happen and you're just taken along?
Yeah.
Or do you have that ability?
Well, the dream, right, means both.
Yeah.
Like you said, there can be a dream where you're aware that you're dreaming, and you can actually make some decisions and determine some things. But there's also dreams where you're just totally driven by what's happening.
Yeah.
So the same thing applies.
Okay.
Again, there's always a correspondence. So see, you can die consciously and be aware of what's happening and do something about it. But if we don't believe in any of this and we have no connection to this, then it's just like, oh my God, it's like, what's happening? And a little confusion, or it can be even so hazy that you're not aware of anything happening. Lots of possibilities, just like there are in dreams.
I just wanted to, because I've seen a lot of people die what I perceive as unconscious. Right, but then I'm just thinking, maybe there is some subtle consciousness going on that I'm not perceiving just because they're so withdrawn at the end of life.
Yeah.
Right? So if the goal is to die conscious, maybe I'm just not I'm not on the plane to see that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what your opinion is in working with the dying, but because that's scary to think, we have to be conscious of Krishna. How many people have I seen conscious on the very...
Yeah.
Well, what's conscious to us may not is a different.
Right, that's what I'm wondering. Maybe they're so withdrawn and they're so pulled in that they're conscious of something, and that's why we keep the environment calm. That's why we keep the environment spiritual. That's why we make our lives so that the people around us know that we want that.
Exactly. It's hard to judge, right? So you just have to do whatever we can to serve at that time. But also, we don't understand. Because going in more and more, withdrawing more and more in, also means like externally to us, we think this person is like, doesn't want anything, is behaving in this way, but we don't really see what's going on.
That seems to happen in life, having nothing to do with passage of death, so it makes sense it could also happen in that. I even find it like when I'm really thinking contemplatively. My wife's saying, "Where are you?" It's like, so it's like, you look like you're just not in your current environment.
You're finding the correspondence, the here and now. You see, this is the method of seeing the correspondence right before us. You can find out so many truths that are beyond our minds, right before your eyes, if you're attuned to them. Yeah.
I guess one small piece of evidence that maybe we could work with that kind of relates to that is when we hear stories of people who are in comas for years or months or whatever, and they come back to consciousness, some of them, and they do say, actually, I remember when such and such was here and so was here, and they said this and they said that, or my mouth was so dry, it was bothering me so much. So that's one thing that seems like it might connect to that gives us some assurance.
Yeah, sure. Yes,
I'm interested in that. My mother died and so-called in a coma. And her eyes were open and closed in that last period, but I could see how much happened in her. And I don't think I projected that onto her. I could definitely see she went through all these stages, and when she actually died, I could just see how wise she became in this last 10 days of so-called. But that was because I could be so close to her all the time, and I saw all the subtlety of her transformation.
Yeah.
For me, it was a transformation.
Many stories like that. Somebody in a coma, or somebody who just becomes quiet and totally withdrawn, but people start to see something special emerging within the face, even physically, a kind of like glow or a kind of peace. The brain may be in a coma, something like this. This is a material thing. This can interfere with things on an external level, but what's happening as we withdraw deeper and deeper into ourselves? That's another story. And that person can have certain experiences that are very uplifting. It could be very,
And apologize. I'm not sure again if this is so black and white and there's one answer, but if you haven't reached liberation, and what I hear, I think, I don't understand with Kastuba is like if you're reaching just like you just want to follow the light and you'll pass through all the spiritual, like all the material planets, and if you like have to, if you're like, oh, that planet's cool and you have the desire, you unfortunately like step off and go to the planet, but so you just want to keep on going up. But pretend your consciousness is that you had no spiritual and you're going to take a reincarnation. Is there actually like, does anyone know if they're like what the steps are? Is it that like I guess in the Bhagavad-gita I don't know if they take a shortcut. It's like when the Atma leaves the body, it goes into a new body. But is it like right away, or is it like you go into another realm and your spirit kind of waits until they find the next body that fits your karma? And like how long is that time period? Like is there, like what is that process?
So what do your dreams tell you about that, Nancy? Or just like we talked about the variety of possibilities.
Okay.
Right? You can pass away and a moment later you could be in spiritual perfection. You could pass away and have to go through several stages. You know, all the religions have terms for these. Purgatory, the Catholics talk about the stage of purification. You know, we hear about hellish places, heavenly places. You know, these are all actually possibilities. It's there in Buddhism. Tibetan Buddhism talks about the different stages, the in-between stages of life and the next birth. The Sufis also talk about it. Their term is interspace. That space that's that's in between either heaven or hell. You know, they have different understandings, but this idea of different experiences are possible. In Hinduism, you have different realms, different lokas, different planets where different experiences can be had. You may pass through, you may go straight to one. You may go through stages of several. You could skip all of it. Just like in dreams, so many possibilities are there. And many things determine. We ask what determines that. We have to, again, go back to what we're doing now and see. You cannot just say it's the same law for everybody. Everybody's going through the same stages.
Does Bhagavatam talks about it?
Bhagavatam talks about, the different realms, the different planets. You see, planets correspond to different states of consciousness. So let's look at this from another angle. Okay, this is on your outline. On the first page, first page, Journey of the Soul After Death. So there's 5 koshas. Have you heard of this? Koshas? Yeah. There, sometimes it's translated as the 5 sheets, the 5 bodies. We have our original pure body, is the spirit. We actually have like a spark within us that's divine. And then surrounding that body is another body. This is called the Vijnanamaya, which is connected to the Atma. This is the pure soul. And the body around that is the different names are given. Intellectual body. Some people call it the intuitive body. In Sanskrit, it's called the buddhi, the intelligence. Kind of. It's not just our intelligence. It's like a higher function, actually. It's a very this intelligence that really sees spiritually. Then this manas, the mind. Some people call this the astral body. Then there's the ether body. In Sanskrit, this is called the pranamoy, the vital body, also called the vital body. So that's why I said, researching this, I found different names in all the different traditions talking about the same thing. That's why I have lots of names for them, because I don't take this too specifically and literally, and don't get caught in all the details. But the idea is that there's different bodies that we have, and at death you pass through these different bodies. Like, as soon as you die, what do you drop, first of all? You drop this physical body, right? It's gone. Now it's just finished. So these other bodies are still there. And now you're going to pass through those bodies and also shed them one by one. So there's some kind of passing through the ethereal body. whatever that means. Again, we can't, questions around this, what can I say, I have no experience, but I've done research and I kind of get an understanding of some of these things. So passing through that, then there's this emotional body. What is that? Desires. All these desires. What are my attachments and desires? And therefore this whole astral plane, this kind of, that plane is what we know as hell. Because if we've cultivated all kinds of desires and we have certain attachments, and then it's very painful to pass through this stage because we want things and we can no longer enjoy them. There's reactions to certain things that we've done. All of this is a kind of purificatory place. Purgatory, again, as the Catholics call it, a place or experiences. So not everybody has to go through all of these. But according to the life we live, the actions we do, our beliefs, our thoughts, our desires, all those things will determine what we actually have to experience. But so not everybody goes like stage to stage to stage to stage. But with our life and our actions, we can just, after we drop the body, we can go straight there. And because it's kind of it's not eternal, it's not an eternal realm. But it feels like time is different there. On higher levels, it starts to feel, you gotta have a sense of timelessness. So that's why this idea of eternal hell has come about, because the feeling is almost like this can go on forever. There's a difference in time here, time there, but this is not some eternal damned place. This is a kind of, this teaching has kind of become distorted. Religions can distort a lot of things also. So some truth comes through, and then, all of a sudden it becomes very simple. There's heaven or hell, that's it. But we can also see there's a heavenly kind of realm that's possible, which is also not the kingdom of God that Jesus is talking about yet. But this information is given in other places. Hinduism, Buddhism, a kind of heavenly experience that's also temporary. That's good karma. With good actions and noble actions, and you live with duty and ideals, you may experience something very wonderful. Those desires get fulfilled in that place. But one again has to circle back around into another birth. One awakens again to another life. That's the result of good karma. It's a good experience after death, but it's not freedom from the cycle of birth and death. That requires spiritual work, what true spirituality is. Yes?
So my question is, when you talk about death and the process of dying, people always say, my life flashed before my eyes. Does that correlate either to any of these planes, or have you come across any other correlation in any of your spiritual research?
I have. This, so many people, we've heard this, right? Everything flashed before my eyes. And it's amazing because it can happen in one moment. You can see everything. How is that possible? There's some examples of that, like Mozart. Mozart, he composed these, it's amazing. 6 years old, 7 years old, he started composing his first opera. Not just like symphony with all the instruments, but like, music and singing. And how's that possible? So he described the way he composed some of his music. He said the whole thing came to him as a whole, the whole composition in one moment. And then he simply had to just write it out, take his time to write it out, form it. That's what you see in Mozart's writings. There's no mistakes. You read everything back then with, this ink, this kind of dipping the ink and writing it. Everything was so clean and perfect because it was already just totally seen as a whole, and now he just had to take the time to put every note together. Very different than Beethoven's writing. If you look at Beethoven's writing, it's just a mess. That was his consciousness. But not to say that Mozart's like better than Beethoven. But just this idea of like somehow a moment he saw it all. So I'm showing how this is actually possible to have in one flash see everything. And it's interesting what happens. As chaplains, we all know some nurses here and some chaplains that we talk about as our duty when someone is dying, something that could be very meaningful, and we're going to talk about this later, is a life review. Right? Go through the person's life with them because that's very healing. See where was the meaning in my life. Now it's interesting that it said the time of death, automatically we have a life review. It's this flash where we see everything. And we see the whole meaning of it all. We see the justice, we see how karma is a reality, how this led to this and this led to that. And there's a kind of peace that overcomes us. And you just moment. And then again, other experiences follow. But somehow it's said that there is this experience of an immediate one-flash life review that we do automatically. But it's interesting that we're trained as chaplains and nurses to kind of encourage that life review because it does something very important for a person at that time. But sometimes there's descriptions of actually this happens for people at that moment. They just see it all, and there's a kind of peace, maybe not peace, again, depending on, maybe we're regretting things. So, but somehow we see it all in one moment. Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, when Krishna revealed this universal form described in the verse, Krishna revealed everything to Arjuna all at once. Standing in one place, he experienced it all in like moments. Everything, the future, the present. How's that possible? Because it's a different state of consciousness. We have past, present, future, we're going kind of on. But there's possibility of a flash of seeing everything. So anyway, I hope that just...
Sorry, I don't know if it's a little often. Just if someone's going communicative and you want to help them do a life review, how would you do that?
Yeah, they're not communicative.
You could maybe ask them to do it themselves.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Anyone here? What came to mind when you said that, if they're not actually communicating, but this idea that hearing still can go on.
Yes.
So they say the first sense to develop in the womb is hearing, and the last sense to leave is also hearing.
Yeah.
So then there was somebody mentioned also in a coma, we should always speak to that person and treat that person as if they're hearing everything. We don't speak to them, they've done they did this and they're that, and families can come in sometimes and just speak like the person is dead already. But there's sometimes nurses are trained that you actually speak like they're still living because they are living, and you don't ever know what they can actually hear. So this idea, when you said that in the mind for me, is that families coming and sharing memories and going thing, and what was this like, and what did this person do, and almost like in a mood of appreciation.
Talking to them anyway, because they can hear.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yes.
What if they're able to speak, but they're still not communicating?
If they're able to speak and they're still not communicating.
Yeah, it's guessing, but out of fear, not kind of deteriorating all the time, but don't seem willing to be thinking about where this is going.
We really have to be where people are.
Yeah.
And so then again, we have this idea that this is very good, very healing to life review. If somebody's not ready for it, we be with them where they are. And that's because they're going through things, and we want to actually be with them in those things, and then gradually other things can come. This is the power of empathy. We're going to talk about this too. And when you empathize with somebody, it's like a gentle push. You don't have to solve it and bring some kind of teaching, but just by the power of empathizing, you can get somebody out of some difficult situation, right? Because we all need to feel that connection. That's powerful to uplift us, get us beyond. Yes?
Related to the question and the power of empathy at the moment or the time passing, I found it so helpful for me to not divide it. Their consciousness is very related to mine. So the state that I'm in my own calmness and empathy for myself. So it comes back to listening. When I'm trying to listen to them, whether or not they're speaking. There are vibrations that happen, that, when you're out in outward speech. So to really quiet and listen to that, and you're listening to yourself, then that empathic connection is created, and what's needed is more understood.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect timing, because this is exactly where we're going. Now, how can we assist those who are dying? Because again, they could be going through all kinds of things, and therefore sometimes we hear about these spiritual things, and it's like, especially myself, just studying all this, researching it, I want to just okay, I know it's really going to be great. Chant Hare Krishna, I want everyone just to hear Krishna's name, because I know that's actually incredible opportunity. And, but at the same time, where is this person at? How can I help them through wherever they're at in their journey? We're all on a journey. Life is a long journey. Again and again, we're coming and going. Where am I in that journey? What's the next step for me to come to where I need to be? So let's look at this next section, to the third page. I have this poem here I like this poem a lot. Someone want to read this poem? Under emotional, spiritual techniques?
Okay.
Yes.
When I ask you to listen to me.
No, above that.
Oh, okay. To go in the dark with the light is to know the light. To know the dark, go dark. Go without sight. And find that the dark too blooms and sings, and is traveled by dark feet and dark wings. Wendell Berry.
Interesting, right? To go in the dark with the light is to know the light. But to know the dark, go dark. What does that mean? Yeah.
If I'm entering into a situation with someone who's experiencing turmoil or sadness or grief, to try to immediately remedy that, or to carry your own kind of brightness or some attitude that's preventing you from actually being there with that person, that will hamper you in your ability to actually accompany them and serve them.
Yeah. That's very nice distinction.
I can think of a micro version of that. I hike a lot, and if you're hiking at night and you use a light, you see great what's in front of you and you miss everything else. There's always something there. You turn it off, your eyes adjust, and it's actually much more fascinating. Interesting.
So can you repeat what you said with intake qualifications?
I was just saying that, basically if we're trying to accompany someone who's in a place of distress or sadness or grief, one of these, whether it is called dark feelings, dark hour, basically if we either try to change their perspective, artificially, or if we're even coming in with our own moral or our own message about it that is kind of preserving us from feeling that, then our ability to serve them and accompany them will be ample.
Yeah. So go dark. Can we go in the dark? That's the question, right? To really be able to serve at that time, can you go in the dark? Or are you also avoiding that? But if we go in the dark, then we can also be with others in their darkness. And that has a great power. That's the power of empathy. It's like if someone is down in a pit, and we're just, we're above that pit. Come out! What are you doing? There's so much light out here. Or another method is to go down in a pit, and you grab that person by the hand, and you try to come out together. What's more powerful? Now some people, that person can stand above, and they can speak some knowledge, and they can wake up too, and they can get themselves out. That's why there's this example of the guru. The guru is sometimes also someone down in a pit, and the guru throws the rope. He says, grab a hold of the rope, that person. So by the power of knowledge has power. And sometimes we're maybe at a stage where we hear just the right thing at the right time, we wake up. But for many of us, we require something else. We require empathy. Someone to come down there with us and grab us by the hand, a friend who can really be in that darkness with us. And that way we can start to kind of bring ourselves up. So the stories in the scriptures too of just strong words having the power. Dhritarashtra, I was thinking of Vidura. That in the Bhagavad-gita there's a story of Vidura spoke very strong words. Dhritarashtra, you are dying. You're living such a shameful life that you're just enjoying in this palace. Give this all up and give yourself completely to your spiritual practice. And somehow those words just shook him, and he left. He left in the night. He just went out into the forest and perfected his life. So some words can do it, but also empathy can do it. And wake us up and get us a little bit.
Would you say that in order for just words to do it, that's sort of like throwing a rope, there has to be a particular empowerment in that person who's doing that, right? It's not like all of us have the ability to do it just through words.
That's the point. We might need something else. We might need something else. But if we're at a certain stage of where our consciousness is awakened, we're ready for that. The readiness. Somebody could be ready just to hear something and completely change their lives. That power. So therefore we have to always hear from the teachers, those who know. Again, those who see the truth. Tattvadarshi. Krishna says, approach one who sees the truth. If you are fortunate enough to find a self-realized soul, then the power of those words can really shake us up and change our lives. A lot of us don't have that opportunity, and according to the stage that we're in, other things that can be also helpful.
I just remembered this story from Ram Dass years ago in his documentary.
they were talking about the Maharishi, and one of his disciples said, when I was sitting in the presence of the Maharishi, it wasn't that he loved me or that I felt loved. It was that I loved everyone. And so there is this power of revealing the thing that is already within us.
Yeah.
And I think being able to sit with somebody in the dark or the light and just sit there sometimes, that's the power.
Powerful.
Right? Yeah.
To trust that
Yeah.
that's okay. We don't have to do anything else.
Yeah.
Trust that.
Yeah.
So this going dark, this is two things here that are really important. Deep listening. Deep listening and empathy, which we've been talking about. Let's read this next quote. Can someone else read this next quote about deep listening and also the blocks to deep listening? Deep listening is not an easy thing, right? Oh, we think that we're listening and really we're preparing the next thing we're going to say. It's very hard. This is like a spiritual practice. What does it really mean to deeply listen, to really hear, and to empathize? It really takes practice. So, yes, you can read? Yeah.
When I ask you to listen to me and you start to give advice, you have not done what I asked. When I ask you to listen to me and you begin to tell me why I shouldn't feel that way, you are trampling on my feelings. When I ask you to listen to me and you feel you have to do something to solve my problem, you have failed me, strange as that may seem. Listen. All I asked was that you listen, not talk or do, just hear me. Advice is cheap and I can do for myself. I'm not helpless. When you do something for me that I can and need to do for myself, you contribute to my fear and weakness. But when you accept as a simple fact that I do feel what I feel, no matter how irrational, then I can quit trying to convince you and can get about the business of understanding what's behind this irrational feeling. And when that's clear, the answers are obvious and I don't need advice. Irrational feelings make sense when we understand what's behind them. Perhaps that's why prayer and meditation works, sometimes for some people, because a higher power is mute and doesn't give advice or try to fix things. So please listen and just hear me. And if you want to talk, wait a minute for your turn and I'll listen to you. Anonymous.
Thank you. So a lot there to think, right? Now we have certain blocks that we put up. Like if someone says, you know, I'm feeling awful today. You know, I don't know what it is. Nothing really happened, but I'm just feeling really empty and awful. You know, what's our response? Now,
Don't feel awful.
lots of responses.
It's a new day.
And those responses reveal things about us. You know? So it's interesting to see, how do I respond in somebody's pain? What's the response? And we start to learn about ourselves, actually, not so much the other person. So there's the person who, you can call him or her, the dispenser of wisdom. So when someone says, I feel awful and empty, you say, you know, life, sometimes it's awful, sometimes it's good, there's these ups and downs, and that's life, you know? The person didn't empathize. The person didn't go there, but kind of stood from somewhere else and gave something. Can you connect to that? If you're feeling empty and awful and someone says that, I mean, maybe it does something. Maybe those words, if you're ready, can do something. But also maybe you just totally missed this person because they're feeling something very that they want to understand and they want to discover for themselves the way out. Right? Or, okay, that's the dispenser of wisdom. There's also the historian. You're feeling empty and awful? Like 4 years ago, I went through this thing with my ex-girlfriend. I also I don't know if you remember her, but yeah, there was like this time in my life where I also felt really empty. And it was just kind of like suffering but like that. And then you remember that time in my life, right? Because then this other thing came and then, just kind of getting into your own history. This can be another block. So I can go on and on and on, right? There's the florist. What does a florist do?
Brings flowers.
Makes everything very nice with flowers, makes some arrangement. Oh, don't worry, you feel awful. No, there's lots of good things going on in your life actually right now. You just got this new job and this thing is happening and just life is pretty good for you. What are you talking about feeling empty? Again, it doesn't meet the person. Right? It doesn't meet. Who are you? Which one are you? Which role do you play? You know, we can ask ourselves that. We all have a kind of one that we go to a lot. You know, you can see I'm into philosophy, so I can kind of get into like this urge to kind of just like get into philosophy with a person. I always feel that coming up in me when someone's talking about their suffering. There's also the detective. Right? Feeling empty and awful. What'd you eat last night? What happened with your friend? Because I saw you. What is it? What's caused it? You know, like kind of seeking. What's the detective is looking for the reason. I'm going to help you find this out. You know? It also misses that pain that the person is in. Anyone know which role they play?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, let's hear a few. We have to find titles for them because it's powerful for us to see where I go when there's suffering.
I actually have a question in regards to that.
Well, we'll take your question right after. I want to just stay with this for now, just because it could lead somewhere else too. But if anyone knows a role that they play, and we'll come back to your question.
The waitress.
The waitress,
You
how's
want to
that?
feed them. You want to take care of them.
Serve them like a motherly love, the
Something.
waitress. Okay. Take this. Okay. Yes.
I always get really excited to relate to people, so I went, yeah, me too, I felt that too. So I've really been aware more lately about saving that. And it's good to relate, but to save that for another time.
Yeah.
You know, let them finish their thought, not interrupt.
Right. And to know you can do something else too. You don't always have to go there. Maybe there's a time for that, and that sounds like a nice tool in some ways, but to use it and not be used by these roles. Yeah.
So I've learned over the years I'm very direct. I listen.
Yeah.
And I ask them, you want me to listen or advise? I just straight
Ask.
up ask.
Yeah.
And sometimes people just listen to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, good, just finish it off and when we're done, we change the topic or whatever we do, or not like sugarcoating and it's good to just ask them.
Good to ask.
Why are you telling me all this? You want me to just listen?
Yeah.
Be your free therapist or you want advice?
Yeah. Nice.
It's easy.
Yeah. It's not so hard to listen.
Yeah.
But actually it is. So it's simple for the simple. Prabhupada would sometimes say that this is simple for the simple. But if you're a little complicated, then what's simple is actually complicated. Yes. Where's there some?
Oh, yeah, I was going to say that like a mother or father can probably go through all these roles in one conversation. But their child wake up, I don't feel good, I don't want to go. Well, it's probably because you didn't do your homework. So what do you do? You know, you can do a lot. Then you can try and help them. Well, I'll bring it to school for you. And you can really cycle through very quickly.
Yeah. That's why it's hard for family. That's why there's a need for a chaplain and nurses and other people, because the family is already in a strong role, and they have such a hard time when their family members are suffering or dying, or whatever. You're in this role. You're a role lock. It's called role lock. You're locked in it. And so for someone else to come in and having that connection, that attachment, they can really just sit and listen and just be a friend and just say, I'm here with you. How can I serve you? Otherwise, we have these roles that we get locked into. We have to be careful.
I guess what I aspire to do is to be reflective and to reflect back to them, just have empathy and to hear them.
Yeah, that's it. It's simple. Pretty simple. So, Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew, he was preparing his disciples for his death. He told them that soon I will go through a lot of suffering, and I will be tormented, and I will be killed. He was sharing this with his disciples. So immediately, Peter was the fiery kind of disciple. He said, no, I will not allow that. That won't happen. And what did Jesus say? Very sharp rebuke from Jesus after. Anyone knows what he said? He says, get behind me, Satan. That you're a stumbling block on this path that I'm on. You're a stumbling block. You're actually blocking me with that attitude. It's a very sharp rebuke. But if you see that this idea, I met many family members who are like Peter. And when a person is dying and is ready to talk about it and just accept it, then the family is kind of like, this is not going to happen. I'm not going to, allow this. And then people who are dying, they're almost like they feel obliged to go through futile treatments just for the sake of a family member. You know, an old person who's ready to like really let go, but this attachment that the family has, it's just like, okay, then for your sake, I'm gonna try to like recover. And recovering isn't possible sometimes. It just means now it's time to let go and let it happen. So Jesus also said, you are a stumbling block by by not accepting what I'm telling you. Actually, it will be inevitable. This will come. So just be with me. He says, your mind is on worldly things and not on divine things. That's what he told Peter. So people can sometimes be like this disciple, Peter, who, you know, it's sad because, you know, a loved one is dying and you want to do everything you can. And sometimes that person who's dying almost has to serve others. And, you know, okay, I'll take care of myself if it's important to you. You know, and I'll try, but I know this is it. And, I'm ready to let go. Are we ready to let go? You know, for that person. That's love. Love is to let go also. Lovingly let go. Okay? Just think of an example. If a mother, you know, she has her son, say a son, and the son is off to school, and the mother just keeps showing up at the school, you know, and like this kind of clinging to the son. Don't do this, I don't want, you know, and calling the school. You know, we can see what kind of damaging effects it can have on a person when the love is clinging and you won't let go. But love to also trust that I love you, I'm always there for you, and I also let you go. A parent has to do that, right? A parent has to also let go. It's tough because the bonds are so strong. And it can be very unhealthy if a parent is just not letting go. So same time when somebody is dying, and it's close to us, but what is real love? Love also has this element of detachment in it. Not that we're detached, we don't have feelings. There's going to be pain, there's going to be separation and love, but at the same time, it's part of like, you're on your journey, and I give you all my love and blessings too. Yeah, so there's lots of stories of people holding on, and after somebody dies, the effect that has on that person. Now they're back in these experiences, and there's like family members that are just pulling the person back in some way, and a person can get very confused after dying in those in-between states. There's lots of descriptions like this in different teachings. That's why a lot of traditions, Hinduism included, has a ceremony that when a person dies, the father dies, it's called the Shraddha ceremony, which is a way of like, okay, person now is going through different experiences. It's a way of kind of like you're offering things, food to God, and this person is still, it's like pushing them a little forward on their journey. That they're getting through these in-between realms.
Shraddha, doesn't that mean?
There's Shraddha and there's Shraddha.
So
yeah, there's two words that it sounds similar, but the emphasis on the A is. So there's a ceremony that's meant to kind of, so these ceremonies are kind of lost, but it's still done in India kind of mechanically. You'll get the priest, and for 40 days we have to do this, and there's offerings made, but this is the deeper meaning of it. It's kind of like pushing one through those in-between states. Okay, but back to this point of empathy. This is sometimes a picture that's given, chaplaincy or spiritual care. It's like where something happens here to a person in their life, some disease, some illness, so they're close to death, and they kind of go down. You know, they go down here where this is loneliness and suffering and pain. And the work of the spiritual caregiver is to meet, their work is down here. The work is down here with them. To be with them in that. And the idea is if you go through it in the right way, then you also come out. But who's serving down here with them to help them on this journey out? So this is called disorientation, orientation, reorientation. This is like, this is just a little simple image that's sometimes used to show that the work of the spiritual caregiver is down here. We want to quickly get them out, especially when it's family, right? We want to quickly just get them out to better, but there's this idea of going in with them, and by that process, trusting this. This is where the knowledge comes in handy. This is not just useless information, but trusting this, that there's an eternal divine being there. And I trust. I trust in that this person has within them also the resources. They're, what is that? Atma. It's the pure, loving servant of God. And the trust that this person has everything they need to actually get themselves out of this situation within their heart. So we assist, we help, but also there's one teacher, Bhakti Thakur, and he says that we all have within us, the term is Svata Siddha Jnana, which means that we have the knowledge of truth of everything already contained within us. Because we've forgotten it, because it's covered, and we require the scriptures to awaken it again, to stimulate us. But it's there within. The truth of all the scriptures is written on the heart. So all the teachings, all the things that we need to know are actually in the soul. But it's covered right now by these other bodies, and we've forgotten. Therefore the message is not that you don't know, but that we've forgotten something, and spiritual awakening is to remember. And you need people, you need help, you need gurus to kind of help stimulate that truth that's within you. So when we're with somebody, even in their suffering, we can know that this is a divine spiritual being. And they can also, I'm going to be with them, and through empathy try to help them, but also understand that they have everything they need within. They have God. We all have God in our heart. This is the teaching of Krsna in the Bhagavad-gita, that He's in the heart of all living beings. So, we want to serve a person at that time according to what they need. Some people want ritual. They want some kind of ritual. This is the power of ritual. Sometimes people are not religious, this religion or that religion, but still ritual can be very meaningful and important to them. There's something about organizing something for a person who's dying. Organize something. I went to one hospital and like a big Dominican family. 10 people were there, and the father, the grandfather, the patriarch of the family had passed away, and all the family was there. And a lot of Dominicans are Catholic, but this family was not Catholic, and religion just wasn't that important to them. But I came there into the room, and they didn't even speak English, and I don't speak Spanish. But I found someone who spoke a little English, and I just, what to do here, I don't know what to do. They don't really want anything from me. But let me try. I just had this idea in my mind of organizing something, because this is a very sacred, powerful moment. They just lost their grandfather, and everyone is so moved, and what can I do? So I just invented something. Okay, let's stand around the body in a circle. I was speaking to one person who understood a little English. Just everyone gather around, and we're going to just go around, and everyone's going to share some memory. And then, so then just one by one, people were sharing and crying. It was so moving. And then somebody came with some rosary beads. So just, can we put this on his chest? And they put it on his chest. And everyone had this idea to go and touch it. One by one, people were just coming and touching the rosary on his chest and crying and hugging. Very powerful, the power of ritual. And so people want some priest or somebody to come and do something holy. That's very meaningful for some people. For others, what's the nut? So say somebody has no connection to God. They have bad experience of religion. So this is not the place you want to go with them. But it's another way of understanding God. God is also, sometimes the word God shuts the door. But there's a word for God that always opens the mind, opens the door. And that word is meaning. Love too. Meaning. Actually, God and meaning are the same thing. But God can shut the door for some people's minds. But if you talk about, okay, let's go with this person, what's meaningful for you? What have you done? What are your values? What was the life you lived? What are you grateful for? And this is kind of like an exercise of being with a person who may not believe in God, but everyone values this, right? What are my values and what has happened to me? And to go there with a person to be willing to kind of create meaning. Actually, meaning is God in another form. Because if you say there's no God, but you have all these deep meanings and meaningfulness, logically it doesn't make sense. we won't go into that now. But that meaning is a metaphysical thing, it's a spiritual thing. If you say everything is coming from atoms, in the beginning there was none of that, then things have formed, and then meaning somehow arose. It doesn't make any sense, actually. So this is one way in for everybody. This always opens the door. For most people, I would say. And like we were talking about this life review, this is also exercise of meaning, finding meaning with a person. I wanted to do one exercise with you for our own, to go in this direction of meaning and meaningful life. There's something called ethical will, or a spiritual will. And I want to give you the opportunity to write down, or if you don't have a pen, I do have a few extra pens. If you have a pen, you can use the back of the outline. I want to just tell you a few questions here. This is meant to be passed on to your loved ones when you die. This is like a document that's there. It has its origins in Judaism and Christianity. It's like, sometimes it's called a legacy letter, where you write down, there's a few questions. And first of all, you're addressing somebody. So think now for a moment. This is like your farewell. This is your goodbye. You're leaving. And who do you want to address this to? Is it just is it your one person in particular, a loved one? Is it family? Is it friends? Is it just, sometimes we don't know. To whom are they concerned? I want to pass down something. But who do we want to first of all address that to? So think about that, or write that down for yourself. I'm going to go through these steps of writing one of these letters, almost like as a draft, just to get you thinking, because I think this is very powerful that everybody, something very powerful for ourselves. Again, the transformative power of mind. Okay? Take it. Do I have one more? Just a pen. Just a pen? Okay. I have more pens. Oh, that's I brought pens. Okay, so the first thing is, who are you addressing it to? So you can start with dear so-and-so. Anyone else need a pen? Now I'm going to go through these questions. Don't feel like you have to have the perfect final copy. I may just go to the next question and then you can stop and just take that question. But whatever, just get the thoughts kind of flowing a little bit. Okay, here's the first thing that you want to answer. Think about your life and all the things you've done, all the things you've seen. You can go back in your mind almost as a meditation, where you were born, what you experienced, childhood, going to school, different friends. Now you're coming to the end, and this question is, what are you most proud of?
Are you most proud?
What are you most proud of? Just take a few moments to either write that down or reflect on it. Some big accomplishment, maybe some very small thing in my life that is very, very meaningful to me. It could have been one exchange with one person because I did that and that day. I'm proud of that. Not always easy. Sometimes you have to do digging. Maybe these answers are not coming to some of you immediately, but what comes immediately? Just see what comes and just write it this is just kind of getting us started on something that's could be very powerful for us. And not in the future when we die, but here and now. But also, this is so awesome to have, right? Just imagine to have this from other family members, right? Like, I think of some people in my family I haven't met, my great-great-grandfather. If I had something like this, like, I would so much value that. What was my great-great-grandfather who I never met most proud of in his life? What was most sacred to him? You know, these things are like very beautiful gifts to give to others. Okay, next question. What is your most sacred belief? What is that belief that you've somehow, the conviction that you have in life that nobody can take that away from you? No argument can take it away. Something that you've learned along the way in your life, which is just incredibly valuable, that you just own that. Nobody could say otherwise. Nothing could happen to take this away. This is something you know for sure. Like something in life has taught you. You can doubt so many things, but this I can't doubt. This is something that I know. What is that? So maybe interrupting you now, but just for now, we'll go to the next question. And just you're getting just started on this process. You don't have to complete, but maybe hopefully some ideas are coming. What is your most cherished memory?
Just one or?
Yes, one. Yeah, it may take time later. You think maybe this was more check, but still, what comes down? There are a few more questions, but I'm just going to ask one more. Again, I have a template of this if anybody wants. I made a few copies. I don't have too many copies. But this is a document that's done more and more by people where they're writing out, it's called ethical or spiritual will. And it's like a gift. Like what a gift to give somebody, to give family. Or even a gift for ourselves. And why is it a gift for ourselves? Because by realizing these things, we can understand now, here and now, how do I want to live? What do I truly value? And I want to go in that direction more and more. So that's how it's a gift to ourselves. It's also such a beautiful gift. Like I was saying, if I want to know these questions from my mother, my father, my uncle, what has my mother learned in this life that she can say, that I know without a doubt? It's such a beautiful question. So this last question, what value or ideal do you hold most sacred? Think of it as like a quality. Is it kindness that you think this is what I value? This is what I consider most sacred? Is it compassion? Is it, what is that value or that ideal that you hold most sacred? So this is for you. I'm not going to ask everybody to share their answers here, but I do want to open it up just for 2 or 3 people maybe to share their experience of doing this. If you like, you can lead that into maybe one of your answers. But what was your experience just doing this, writing this? Did you have any? Yeah, what happened for you, Ajay?
I'm feeling emotional. I'm feeling very peaceful.
Emotional, peaceful.
Yeah. The question which I want to talk about is my most cherished memory. And I remember a few things that it just like very emotional about.
Yeah, you went back there. You really went back to that time, that place.
And one of that was staying in the Bhakti Center.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Always good.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. We learn by doing this exercise, what do I value? We can get so quickly distracted by so many things in this world. But this is kind of the core of who we are, to meditate on that. Someone else want to share their experience? Yes.
In reflection, it's an opportunity to reflect intelligently, to let go, to feel gratefulness and to celebrate.
Thank you. Celebrating. There's a time in our life, we have to focus on all the sorrows and all of it. We have to go through everything. We have to experience everything in our life. But there's a real power also in going deeply into what we're grateful for, what we value. It can also give us a great strength within. So we have to kind of experience everything fully. But there's especially these sacred moments can be really uplifting, inspiring, and push us forward on the path of healing, the path of love. Anyone else want to share their experience? Yes, we'll go in the back.
As I was answering them, I felt, I was like thinking in my head, like, how can I answer these questions? Like, I feel like I still have so much left to live to answer them. But then once I finished, I thought it kind of like humbles you to appreciate what you've been through so far, because nothing is guaranteed. Like, maybe I don't have that much more to live for, and that I should appreciate like the values I have and the memories that I have now, because they're what I have now.
Yeah, I can really relate to that, of what I haven't done yet.
Yeah.
No, I'm not ready. What I haven't done yet. And there's still so much more I want to do and experience and be part of, but like you said, to kind of really just reflect for a moment, well, what have I experienced? And connecting to that gratitude. That's the guarantee. Something else is coming. Let me just see. Gratitude is very powerful, because the more gratitude we feel, the more actually will come into our life. The more of the same will come into our life. And if we're missing what we've already been given, then it's hard to receive what comes later too. So it's kind of like a practice also, being grateful. One more person who hasn't participated yet. Did you?
No.
Yeah, okay.
I was going to say, like a lot of those ones I feel like you hit on it, but I'm just like, wow, when I looked at like a cherished memory, I was like, I don't really have like a memory that I cherish so much. And I'm like, whoa, you really got to look at that. And dig a little deeper because
Yeah.
my life is not so meaningful as I thought it was.
Mhm.
That's what I have to say.
Yeah. Look deeper. What memory do I cherish? Is there something really there? Like, you're wondering, like, you haven't connected to that, so you're wondering, why not?
Mm-hmm. And I could see that at dying, being regretful about
Yeah.
that. I might have missed something.
Yeah. There's a Buddhist meditation on death. And the idea of that one is to get to this place of what do you still need to do? In other words, it kind of like leads you up to this moment that you're on your deathbed and what's incomplete? What is that thing you need to do? What did you need more of in your life? What's lacking at that point? And then to make that a meditation of how to now live. So you go in that direction too. Like our minds also do that, right? What haven't I done that Okay, so we're coming close to the end. And I want to look this last section. I know it's tough to be here for 3 hours straight. Hope you guys are doing okay. So we're seeing that there's a few ways to prepare ourselves for death. This was one example of preparing ourselves, actually. Another way of preparing ourselves for death is to be with those who are dying. That's also a kind of preparation. It can be scary. It can be repulsive. It can be fearful. All that can come up within ourselves when we're around. And the more we kind of step into it, we can start to practice to be peaceful and to be actually a loving support and to be of service at that time. We're also like preparing ourselves in a certain way. And also the knowledge that we went through. This knowledge is not just theoretical knowledge. I've given this presentation twice now. And after the first one, somebody asked me, so do you feel less fear about death after like doing all this preparation, all your study? And at that time I said, actually I don't. I don't feel less fearful. But for this second preparation, preparing today, going over some of these things and just hearing stages, even though it seems like a very theoretical external thing, but what happened for me this time is that I started to feel that, I don't know about these stages, but when I die, I'm just going to be open to the possibility that different experiences may come. And I'm just going to be like trusting and ready that, okay, whatever I experience, go through it in a trusting way and turn to God from within and try to connect to that deeper part of myself. And in other words, that's like it really took away some of the fear. I can honestly say that this, knowledge is also can reduce that fear when we really take it in deep. And so for myself, I'm kind of feeling like, okay, I'm afraid, I don't understand, but just knowing this and seeing how it shows up in so many different traditions, I'm going to just accept what comes. I'm going to prepare myself to accept what comes, but with a trusting heart, with a loving heart. And maybe it's going to be difficult, maybe I get shocked, maybe I'm going to be ready in that way. And I really feel like it did something to me. So it's this attitude that we can develop that can help us. Now I'm going to share with you the most powerful way to prepare for death. These are some ways. Be with the dead, learn about the knowledge, a few ways of reducing some of that fear. But this now is the most powerful way of preparing for death. So let's look at quote. Lots of quotes that talk about this. I always wonder when I would find this thing, like I started in the beginning about saying dying gloriously. It's not referring to the physical death. But there's this idea that you find in all spiritual traditions about dying to live. So again, we have Jesus in the book of John. Sorry, I don't know if this is actually from Jesus or from John. So I'll just state that. Jesus' words? Okay. So he says, so what is this mysterious teaching all about? Verily, verily, I say unto you, except a grain of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone. But if it die, it bringeth forth much fruit. something about dying, bringing forth food. Right? Next quote from the Tao Te Ching. So now we're going to China, Taoism. Similar idea that's talked about. He who dies and yet does not perish becomes immortal. Something is dying, but yet you're living and fruit is coming from that death. This is St. Francis of Assisi. It's this famous prayer. It ends with this line. It is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is dying to self that we are born to eternal life. So what is this all about? This dying before dying. What is this dying to live? Ego, right? Something about the ego. Something has to die. Like St. Francis says, dying to self. What does that mean? And how do you do that now?
Surrender. And I see it as that is death. It's letting go, it's surrender to self.
Yeah.
Every moment we can surrender to something, right?
Yeah. It's a surrender. Somehow this word surrender is very big. It means a lot. And the Bhagavad-gita ends with Krishna saying, Arjuna, I've explained to you so many things. Now you can do whatever you like. I've talked about so many different paths and so much information I've given you. Now I've given you freedom, but I have one last message to give you. Just surrender unto me with love, and I will protect you. Gita ends on that note of surrender. What does that mean, that word? We have to explore that a little bit. So I like Kierkegaard, Soren Kierkegaard. He's a Christian philosopher, writer. And look below now. This is the marriage of the opposites. So again, I put these strange things in there just to get you thinking, meditating a little bit. What does this mean? The opposites, the dualities. In this world, there's happiness and distress. There's love and there's hate. There's darkness and there's light. There's the good and there's the bad. All these dualities are there around us. And in esoteric literature, they talk about these dualities have to be married together. Because you see, we usually want one. We want the good one. We want the light. We want the love. And we want to reject the other side. Or we want to avoid the other side. But this teaching is something about these two get married. And it's something new is produced. In a marriage, there's the creation of a child. Something new is born. So when these things, what does it mean? It means accepting both fully. You accept the light and the darkness, then you actually can transcend both. When you accept death, we want life, we want to live, but if you can accept death, what does that mean? You can accept death, and you can transcend life and death, the cycle of life and death. So it's about fully accepting everything. Acceptance isn't just this passive. Just passively accept everything and now just sit back and passively accept. It's deeper than that. So let's see what Kierkegaard says underneath that. Anyone want to read that quote? It belongs, it says.
It belongs to the imperfection of everything human that man can only attain his desire by passing through its opposite.
Okay. Deep statement, I think. Right? You can only attain the desire. That longing of your heart can only be attained if you pass through its opposite. So if we long for love, if we long for that truth, eternal life, there's a part of us that has to also be willing to pass through the opposite of that. Marrying these two sides. And the next quote, someone can read, and we're gonna. These are kind of meant for your own meditation and discovery what they actually mean. But I could just say that they're very profound, and they're found everywhere in all spiritual traditions. And this is really the art of dying, is to understand this point. We're going to go deeper into it. But someone could read the next quote.
If we are filled with terror at the thought of death coming for us, let us start to meet him at our leisure.
That is, go to meet him. So that, thank you for reading that. That is, go to meet him at our leisure. seems to be saying that we have to kind of pass through death. So this is the key now. What is death? When you think of death, this physical death, it's kind of symbolic in one sense of something else. Not so special die, we all have to die. So just passing through that death doesn't give you perfection. It's what's going to happen to all of us. So what is all this talk about dying before dying? And this kind of death, that one goes through this death, but then they can live. So what accompanies death? What are some things, what feelings come up at death? There are some feelings there. There's some
Loneliness.
okay, loneliness. Okay. Fear. What else? Loneliness, fear,
Sorrow.
sorrow,
Resistance.
resistance,
Regret.
regret, terror. What else?
Peace.
Peace? There can be. But to get to that peace, when we think of death as this kind of like the stopping of what we want, what does that do for us?
To detach from everything that you own and are.
What does that do? What does that do to you, that fact?
It's the end of you.
Anger.
Yeah. Scare, anger? Yeah. I've seen people angry. Angry that this has happened. Lost. Remorse.
Yeah,
And loss. Yeah. So fear, pain, failure, frustration, disappointment, unpleasantness. This is death. These are the many faces of death. See? Death has many facets that come to me in life. Here and now, these things are coming. We experience now throughout our life loss. And the big question is, when these little deaths come, Paul, again in the Bible, he speaks of daily dying, daily deaths. When these little deaths are coming so often into my life, because now we're taking death not as this final loss of the body, but just what is it really? It's loss, it's pain, it's separation, it's frustration, it can be anger, disappointment, fear, all those things. So these things are coming to us throughout our whole life. And the question is, the big question, how do I respond to them? Where do I go for shelter when those things come up? Am I just pushing it out of my mind? Am I fighting against it? We can respond in different ways, right? People talk in psychology about fight and flight. So when disappointment comes, how do you respond? How are you responding? We have to be real here, because maybe there is anger. Then I could just be humble and be real about it. Okay, there's anger there. Actually, that's how I want to respond right now to this disappointment. That there's been some injustice, whatever it may be, some kind of thing that goes against what I want. So we have to be real about what comes up for us. But then we have to ask, but is there another way of responding? Is there some holier, is there some more sacred way of responding? Is there a divine response? What is a divine response when loss comes to your life, when disappointment, when suffering comes in some form? And death shows one of its faces throughout your life. What do you think is a divine response to that? Acceptance, okay, that could be part of it, just accepting this is happening. What else?
Compassion.
Compassion. Yeah.
Learning.
Learning. Yeah.
Thankfulness.
Thankfulness. Tough, right?
Yeah.
Now just go to your life. What are you suffering from right now? What is your suffering right now? We all maybe have something right now that is our suffering. And then the key is, how am I responding to that right now? And it's going to come again in different ways. And if I practice responding in a divine way, what is that? But we're discussing a little bit what that is. Then, when that final time comes, one can actually die in peace because one's already died. Something has already died. You've gone through death. So it's in the little deaths that come at us every day. And the proper response. So the Srimad Bhagavatam, one great scripture, talks about this beautiful attitude of a person when suffering comes. And it says, getting some understanding now what it means to die gloriously. It means these actually these little deaths that come into our life. So there's a beautiful verse that describes one great personality is describing that when all the things that are coming to my life, the karma that's coming, I'm accepting it as what I myself have produced. And Krishna, I take shelter of you in the core of my heart. And I'm grateful that everything that you're sending to me, I'm accepting it. And also, in the core of my heart, I'm thanking you and connecting to you. So this verse says, one who has that attitude, then liberation, freedom becomes their rightful claim. Yeah. Yeah, so something about whatever comes to us in life, that I'm accepting it as my karmic reaction, and I'm accepting it in the way of, this is it, this is what's coming to me. A healthy acceptance. There's also an unhealthy acceptance. This is where it gets tricky. It gets very nuanced, right? Because we think acceptance just means, I'll just accept everything that comes, and there's an unhealthy acceptance, and there's a healthy acceptance that has wisdom, understands that this is coming to me for a reason. What's the lesson? And in the core of a heart, they're turning to God and thanking God with a grateful heart. The one who stays in that attitude when these daily deaths come, then liberation becomes that person's rightful claim. It's a beautiful verse, but we're just staying a little longer with this idea of the right attitude in daily suffering. Yes.
Please still make a comment.
Yes.
I have this story, I don't know if I told you, I'll make it very quick. This story before someone I met who lived in Brooklyn, and he was a shiatsu masseuse. And I used to work in a bakery, and I would go to him very tired, and he would give me a massage, and then he would walk me to the door, and he always said goodbye to me like it would be the last time we would see each other, like he had this knowing. He was just a very spiritual person. And I, a couple years later, got an invitation to his funeral, and I couldn't grasp that he was dead, because it just didn't seem like he was a person that would ever experience death. That's how I was so confused at that moment, and I also didn't know that there was anything wrong, and I was thinking that maybe he was shot, or so I didn't want to find out, and I just went to the viewing. But what I was really it really like made me feel like I was there during his death, to hear that nurses came and were at that funeral and said that they had never felt so much like joy and love during a death. Like they couldn't wait to go to the hospital and go to work, and it was kind of a time. He died of cancer, and he died in the hospital, but he was like somehow teaching other people a lot about death at that time too. So it was an example of someone that lived maybe like he knew how he wanted to die.
Yeah, he kind of saw it in his life, and therefore also his death seemed glorious and affected people in that way. Impacted people in that way. Yeah. So by this practice of daily dying, and again, just go to what your suffering is right now. We all have some suffering right now. Now my response, am I responding with, we have to be real with what the response is. Maybe we're not at that place of just total acceptance and forgiveness, whatever it may mean. So we be humble about that. This is where I'm at. I know what I should be doing, but I can't right now. But is there also another response? Is there a divine way of responding? Do we still believe that there is? And can we not come to that state eventually? Do we not have that as an aspiration and as a goal? To keep that as our sacred goal. And what is that divine response? So this idea, it comes and it's expressed in different ways, but there's also a practice of turning to God. This is divine. This is bringing in something divine to the whole equation that changes everything.
What do you mean by unhealthy acceptance?
So who could think of,
Like just being like, screw it, I don't care. Like,
it's a kind of acceptance, right?
Right.
Yeah. So there can be an acceptance in the Bhagavad-gita. It talks about the three modes of nature. So you can accept things in the mode of ignorance, which means it's a lower mode. It means that I don't care. The person who doesn't care about anything can also be very peaceful. Right? Very accepting and very peaceful. But what's it coming from? It's coming from this indifference and I don't care. Nothing really beautiful can manifest from that. That may be where we're at, and we have to be where we're at to gradually rise. But at the same time, there's an acceptance that's very deep, that really understands and has faith and has patience through it. And still, with that, whatever comes, and I accept, and I'm still going to live with integrity. I'm going to go through this honestly. I'm going to go through this taking shelter of God. I'm going to go through this with love. Right? That response, practicing that response in our everyday life, if you do that more and more and more and more, then when that suffering comes again, it's not this terrifying pain. It actually is just seen as one is equal-minded. The Bhagavad-gita explains about being equipoised in the happiness and the distress. So one gets freed up in some way where it's not just terrifying destruction and death, but one actually can see it for what it is. One's gone through it, and therefore there's no more fear. You see people who are very spiritually advanced, they usually have gone through a lot of suffering. You know? We're all going through a lot of suffering, but they keep choosing to go through it, to respond in a very sacred, holy way. And therefore, when death comes, it's not a big deal. It's just this physical body, just letting go of it. It's not this terrible thing, because in so many ways death does come, and I've practiced overcoming it by my response. By turning to God, by responding with service. What if difficulties come into your life? Imagine this, and I start to think, what's my opportunity to serve in this difficulty? Here's a difficult situation that comes to me. Now, where's the opportunity to serve others in this? That's a divine response. If we practice that more and more, seek that answer and try to find how to do it, then we're actually, you're going through it. You don't have to die again. This is getting us free from the cycle of birth and death. So all the teachings, it's very profound. This dying before dying is emphasized, and we're kind of getting into now what that really means. Is there some comment or question?
It ties way back to the beginning with listening to others. A lot of times people will say, I'm afraid, and then people say, well, don't be afraid. Or why are you afraid? But actually, if we can really feel our feelings, if you're sad, then go lay on the couch and put a blanket over your head and really feel what that feels like, so that you can let it go. Because so many times we just want to push our feelings out the door and ignore them, but then they come up in the other parts of the body. I mean, there's so much physical pain, emotional pain by neglecting listening to the self, the physical self, the emotional self, the spirit self.
Yeah, if our practice throughout life is when suffering comes and loss comes, and I just push it away, then when death comes, again, there's this terrible struggle. Because for so long I've trained myself, and I don't want to deal with death in all these spaces that come. And therefore it's this terrible experience, a fearful experience. But if we can do here and now, we start to face the many faces of death. There are many faces. Because death, we're really getting to what it actually is. It's this pain of loss. It's like the big no I was saying in the beginning. The big no to what? But can you accept that no and still continue? Accept it in a deep way and still love. The risk here is always to just take this spiritual knowledge and when something comes to just jump to it. Okay, divine response. Respond with love, but maybe I'm not really there. Maybe I have to react in some way. But then you also remain humble in that reaction. Okay, this is what I have to do, this is where I am. But is there something else possible? Don't I have also the potential to respond with love? And I want that. I pray for that. I want to thank Krishna, give me the strength to do that. That habit will help us.
Did you say there are 3 unhealthy acceptances and one is ignorance? What are the other 2?
Okay, so this described in the Bhagavad-gita, there are 3 modes of nature. So everything can be done in one of these 3 modes. So there's the mode of ignorance, which ignorance, darkness, is connected to laziness, not caring, lethargy, stagnant, dark, kind of like heaviness. That's one mode of nature. The other mode is passion, which is a kind of like very desires and ambitious, kind of an agitation. And then there's sattva, which is the mode of goodness. It's a kind of clarity and wisdom, harmony. And then there's the 4th mode. This is called turiya, which means the spiritual level. So these 3 modes of nature are all within the material realm. And there's also a divine, that's why I keep speaking of a divine response. That's really where we want to go, because it's out of the boundaries of the 3 modes of nature.
And what is that word?
Turiya. Turiya means the 4th.
How do you spell
Turiya.
So the passion would be to react?
Yeah, mode of passion means very reactive, very passionate, very agitated, desires for myself, kind of a selfish, that's kind of very strong in us. So one person just doesn't care. It's kind of a mode of ignorance, mode of passion. It's like I care so much, but for myself, and I want this, and that kind of mode.
So there's actually 4 modes. Is that the...
There are 3, always the 3 are mentioned because it's 3 modes of the material nature. Yeah, so you'll find in the scriptures also this talk of turiya, which means the 4th, which is another way of describing God, or the transcendence. I'm going to do a seminar on the 3 modes of nature in March, if anybody would like to. You can go to the bhakticenter.org, and there's going to be if you'd like to sign up for it, but there's going to be a discussion on these 3 modes of nature. It's a very great tool for spiritual. Okay, so we're coming near the end, and I want to get to this last point. So they're able to accept life, the suffering that comes, the happiness that comes, everything, accept everything fully. What happens is you come to this state of what's called equanimity. Whereas when great joy comes, you're also not overwhelmed by that joy. You can maintain a kind of sanity. Joy can also make us kind of lose it, right? And we're usually in these extremes of terrible pain, depression, or also intense joy. But Gita always talks about this state of consciousness. And Krishna says that the person who's in this state of consciousness, so with happiness and distress, whatever comes, they remain very equipoised. They're not shaken either way. He says that person is very, very dear to me. That verse is there. I have written. One who is equal to friends and enemies, happiness and distress, fame and infamy, who is fixed in knowledge and who is engaged in devotional service. Such a person is very, very dear to me. Now, why is that person so dear to Krishna? Why is that person so dear to God who has that quality? Because that person's become free. And now with their freedom, they can work for God. You see, what interferes with us doing the will of God? All the religions talk about doing the will of God, surrendering to the will of God. What interferes with that is that I'm caught in this happiness and distress. My mind is there. When distress comes, I'm overwhelmed. And happiness, I'm just also affects me in such a way, and I'm kind of just dealing with this. I'm caught in this reactive web. The Buddhists also talk about the web of karma. I keep just I'm in this reactive phase, and I get caught and entangled. But when happiness comes, distress comes, and I'm equal in both, then I have a certain freedom. And now what do I do with that freedom? I don't just sit back and enjoy it. Oh my God, I'm free. Some spiritualists do that. Their goal ends there. To come to a state of equanimity. For some people, this is the goal of spiritual life. But when Krishna goes someplace else with it in the Bhagavad-gita, he says you become equipoised, and you're so dear because now you are free to be able to serve others, to serve me, to serve with love. In other words, you can be so committed now because nothing else is interfering. Your own stuff is not interfering.
I've never heard that before. That's really useful.
It's powerful. Why is somebody like Prabhupada, we have Prabhupada's picture here, I was mentioning, he was able to accomplish so much. Why? Because his mind was free from all of these petty attachments and reactions, and it wasn't thinking, and it wasn't caught in that kind of web, which is free to serve. And therefore, in just a few years, he accomplished so many things because his commitment to serving Krishna was 100%. But we have this ego that wants things and is struggling, and then something comes into my life and I just can't, I'm shaken by it, and then I react in the wrong way, and that creates more reactions. This is karma. This is the whole network of karma. We become completely entangled, almost like our freedom gets more and more restricted. And then I'm just a reactive machine. You know? I'm just reactive. Life is just sitting this, and I'm at the mercy of my environment. Whatever comes to me, I have to just, I'm subject to it. This idea of facing suffering, we start to overcome that, the power of that suffering can have in our lives, and when we become reactive, but we start to actually react in a spiritual way, then we overcome these dualities. And now one is free to actually serve with love. And that means serving God means serving all living beings. So that the key becomes this attitude of service. And therefore, all the stuff I shared today, and some of our teachers would like, all this whole description of death and the stages, it's not really necessary to go into all of that. The essence of spirituality is to develop the service attitude. This is what Bhakti means. That I want to serve God with love. I want to serve others with love. If we just make that the focus, then all the other everything else falls into place. But as I said, it's simple for the simple. So if you're simple enough to hear that and just totally accept it, then all blessings to you. It's wonderful. But I know myself, and I require lots of things. I got to get into all the knowledge and all the things and see how things work, and that's where I'm at. But actually, the message is very simple. The message is just loving service to God, to all living beings, because that goes against this desire that we have to just take for myself, but to give. So it ends up being a very simple message. Therefore, these core values of just humility and love and service, this is the essence of spirituality, even though it's so simple. But we require so many other things to just know and understand before we can actually get to living that way. If we can keep this in mind, and when suffering comes, difficulty comes, then we respond in a divine way. Which means, on the highest level, that means seeking the opportunity to serve in that difficulty. So, when you're able to face the little deaths, then the shift changes. First, it's just horribly painful when these little deaths come. Then, it becomes painful, not horribly painful. If you just keep facing it, it just becomes painful. Then, if you can keep doing it and responding with integrity, with love, then it goes from painful to just being difficult. And if you keep practicing, it goes from difficult to challenging. Challenging is like a nicer way of saying no longer like this horrible pain, but now it's like a challenge in my life. And if you continue to face it with integrity and with love, then you can come to this place of acceptance. Suffering comes, death comes in some form, and I can accept it. And if you continue on, keep practicing, when that suffering comes, you can be peaceful. And then what's the next stage after that? You keep reacting, you keep responding, and it goes from peaceful to compassion. Because the suffering that so many others are undergoing, and one starts to feel, suffering comes my way, but I feel compassion actually for others. That life is, there's so much suffering. And then finally, the last stage, we're going horrible pain, but if we keep practicing to respond in the right way, then we come to understand that this suffering, this little death that's coming into my life, here is God coming before me. That's the deepest realization. This is God coming before me. Krishna says in Bhagavad-gita that I am death. I am death. Here's God coming before me out of love. Imagine that when suffering comes, you can see that this is the mercy of God coming, because this will give me an opportunity. Some opportunity is there for me in this suffering. Now this is very advanced. We can't fake this and pretend that we're there. As soon as the thing comes, we may say it in our minds, but then really what's happening and how am I really living it out? But this is the ultimate realization that death, and death comes to me, this is actually God. And I surrender with love, and I look for the opportunity to serve. That's the actual truth. suffering and death is God. Therefore, that's why Krishna, this is the deeper meaning to why Krishna says in Bhagavad-gita that I am death. Well, we just have a couple minutes left. And there's a practice of how do we connect to God here and now? What is the most powerful method? So that is also described in Hinduism, in the scriptures. That we have this divine seed that we talked about, right? The Atma, this divine seed that's there in our heart. And no waters in this world can actually help that seed grow. Seed, you usually need some water and you need some light. You have to cultivate it, and then there's growth. So there's a seed, that divine seed, it's described, it cannot be cultivated by anything. It cannot be watered by anything in this world. But there's another kind of water. Jesus also talked about this. He called this the living water. You know the story when Jesus was at the well and a Samaritan woman came, and he told the Samaritan woman, he said, if you drink that water from the well, then you will simply just thirst again. You will drink it and satisfy yourself, but very soon after you will become thirsty again. But if you take this living water that I have, if you take it, then you'll never have to drink again. You'll never go thirsty again. This is that living water. So Chaitanya, there's Mahaprabhu, he explains in the Bhakti tradition that what is that water? He talks about this. That seed, that divine seed has to be watered, but nothing, no waters in this world but fluid. So there's a beautiful verse that he describes, and it says, Kirtana Jale. Shravana Kirtana Jale. Jale means water. And the water of Kirtan, here actually literally it says hearing about Krishna and chanting of Krishna's name. That water of Kirtan is what grows that seed, that divine seed. So it has to be something spiritual to really awaken it. So as I'm almost saying, nothing in this world can really awaken it, but something spiritual can awaken your spirit. And what is the most powerful method for awakening the spirit? This is in this word, kirtan. Does somebody here not know what kirtan means? Do you? Okay. Kirtan is the process of chanting God's name. And we can also see that this is a universal practice. In Christianity, they have also their chanting. It was a long time ago, it was very popular. Now it's not so much emphasized, but this idea of the Jesus prayer is the repetition of the name of Jesus. Simply that. There's another variation of it. But this idea of repeating the name, the holy name. In Buddhism, they also have their mantras that they chant. They have their rosaries. The Catholics have their rosaries. Sufis have their rosaries, but they also repeat when Muslims are dying. They also want to hear the 99 names of Allah. So this thing of the power of the name of God is also repeated. And of course, Hinduism, mantra. Mantra means the sound vibration that liberates and frees the mind. This is a directly spiritual activity. Or other things I mentioned might be a little psychological, how to develop myself, goodness, integrity, living in this way with character. It kind of raises us in a certain way. But we also need something spiritual coming down to us to really make that complete transformation. And everywhere in India we find it all gurus, and I've researched a lot, and there's always this talking of the power of chanting. So therefore in the Bhakti tradition it's so much emphasized, kirtan. And there's a place in India where the kirtan is going on 24 hours a day for the last 18 or 19 years. It's never stopped. So that means that another group will come, and when a group is chanting, another group will come and kind of relieve them and take over, and it never actually stops. It just continues on and on and on. And many people, when they're dying, they're brought there. This is in Vrindavan. Yeah. Other places also have something. It's not always 24 hours a day, but it's this idea of this is the most powerful atmosphere to pass away, because it's this direct spiritual sound vibration. So there's a whole science behind this, how it is that sound and the chanting of God's name could be the most powerful thing. I'm just giving you kind of like a little introduction to that. but this tradition teaches, and many traditions as well. It's not so much done anymore in many other traditions, but you still find like a remnant of it, where people know about it. Some monks do it maybe. You know, Mount Athos in Greece, there's some monks that are still chanting, Orthodox monks. But actually you see it everywhere, it's universal. And the idea of chanting God's name as the most powerful spiritual method and means of awakening that divine love in the heart. So the spiritual path is kind of like bringing ourselves up with our character, but also taking something from above and really letting it go into the heart. And we do chanting here at the Bhakti Center. We have Thursday nights, we do chanting, kirtan, and this is what we're doing. This is considered the most purifying and powerful way of awakening the divine seed within us. Okay, I'm so grateful that all of you have come. I hope you were able to, hope you got something from it, something valuable, and really like an honor and pleasure. In the very beginning, when all of you were sharing just why you're here, it was so moving and so beautiful. And just from that, you can see the power of death, of meditating on death, thinking about it, and seeing what it really means to die. Die to live. Dying is all about living purely, with love. So, thank you so much. I'm grateful. And
Thank you.
my pleasure.